My entitled mom despises the fact that I have a service dog, claiming that I don't need it, and even going as far as treating me like garbage the second I get it. And I'm honestly still so confused by this, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I caused my mother, who I lived with at the time, to have a full 3-year-old style tantrum over me getting a service dog. For a little bit of background, I've got a pretty serious visual disability that impacts my mobility. I have no balance, I will walk off stairs and curbs, and basically, I used to accidentally hurt myself a lot. For a while, I had been looking at getting a service dog to help me with these issues, as stuff like canes and walkers just didn't do anything. I also secretly hoped that it would help my serious burnout being caused by world events. So after about a year of rejections, my best friend randomly shows up to my house one day, showing me pictures of border collie puppies, and there was this one dog that I just fell in love with. I can't really explain it, but we connected basically instantly, even though I had not met this dog yet. So I tell my buddy that if the puppy was still available, I would take her. I wasn't one to make spontaneous choices like that, but something just clicked. Well, my mother was less than thrilled even at the idea. We were a dog household growing up, but my mother is, well, crazy to put it nicely, and if she gets it in her head that something is bad, she will double down until there's nothing left. So my buddy calls me and tells me the pup is still looking for a home. I then reach out to the service dog organization and I explain the situation, and they explain that it may be possible to train the puppy, but they would need to vet them, check their temperament, and all that jazz. So I passed the numbers along, the trainers met the pup's mom's owner, and I was given a temporary green light. And at this point, I was on cloud 9. Not only would I be getting my own service dog after waiting ages, but for the first time in nearly a year, I actually felt happy enough to get up before 6 o'clock p.m. So I spent the next couple of days getting everything prepared for when my dog would come home. I got the vet stuff set up, training crate, the food, the toys, the whole 9 yards. And it was here that my mother began getting more and more hostile towards me. It started off pretty petty, like my dryer door randomly getting opened, food that I made for myself getting tossed out, that sort of stuff. But it grew to be more crazy, like I had to replace the dog's leash 3 times as it kept getting cut. But eventually, this all came to a head when we went up for the day in the mountains, where we were gonna decorate graves, go eat, and everything else. And I was just a little bit too happy, like a bit over the top with being helpful and making sure everyone had what they needed. And this led to snarky remarks off and on a few days prior to when I was given my dog's pickup date, and I was just living in a different world. My sister who organized this trip and her kiddos were aware, but my mother was not. Anyways, tensions got raised as the day went on, and everyone was excited for the day trip and the new dog addition to the family. Well, at this point, my mother snapped at me. Around the time that we went to eat, I was just getting dunked on left and right about how I didn't need a dog and how my condition that I've had since I was literally an infant wasn't that bad. And for context, I can't see more than a few inches past my face, so I don't know what she's talking about. My sister, in a moment of brilliance, had had enough and told my mom to shove it because I was approved for this assistance dog and was going to pick her up in 2 weeks' time. When she heard this, you could have heard a pin drop. This 50-plus-year-old woman then starts sobbing, screaming, and kicking like a toddler, saying that she didn't want a dog and that it wasn't fair that this was being forced on her, and how she didn't like the dog's breed and wanted a Yorkie and all of this other BS. We got asked to leave the restaurant, and my mom got so mad that she threw her phone down, causing it to shatter, which then led her to the parking lot of this establishment where she was on her knees falling, and I just honestly can't even describe it. The whole kicker to this whole thing, prior to this dog coming into my life, is that my mother had been supportive of the idea, so I'm seriously not even sure where it all came from. She just really did not like my service dog. Even 2 years later, after I had the dog and they were fully trained, it actually led me to moving out, but that's an entirely different story. And now, 5 years past this incident, she's now obsessed with my dog and acts like none of that ever happened. Now, I know it's a bit tame compared to what normally gets posted here, but it's still important to note because this entire situation is incredibly annoying. Oh man, I can't stand people who act like this. They encourage you to do something and then they turn around and be like, wait, but it's not the way that I want it done. How dare you actually do the thing that I encourage you to do in the first place? It's like, lady, what are you complaining about? You literally said to your daughter, hey, you should do this and this would be good for you. And it's like, wouldn't you be happy that your kid has a dog that can help them see properly? Like the original poster can't see anything, what, a few inches past their face? And your mom was to sit there and be like, oh, well, that's just absolute BS. You can't do that. That's not fair. So truly, I'm glad you moved out of there because that entire situation is crazy to me. And I just can't stand the fact that she would actually act like that and then try to turn around and pretend as if nothing happened. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. A group of monstrously toxic shoppers mock a little girl for having a disfigured face. So I decided to step in by giving this little girl a $50 gift card, while also telling her that she's pretty and that she deserves the best things in life. Because this scenario honestly pissed me off, as that little girl definitely did not deserve to be treated that way. Here's what happened. Some years ago, I was shopping at a Target, and I noticed a little girl and her mom receiving all sorts of unwarranted negative attention from other shoppers. People were staring, pointing, gasping, and even snickering and talking loudly about the girl between themselves. The little girl had to have been around 4 years old and suffered from some sort of congenital disfigurements to her face and head. Like half of it was kind of dented in. It was bad and kind of shocking, but my god, she's a little girl. Be better, people. It was obvious that for the girl and her mom, this kind of rude attention was nothing new. The little girl wouldn't look at anyone, but kept her head down and just looked at the merchandise within reach or occasionally at her mom. The mom had no problem defiantly looking anyone in the eye, shoulders being squared up. You can tell she had no problem standing up to a jerk like these shoppers. And you could tell too that they didn't have much money. So anyways, I took in all this while I was shopping, never directly staring, mostly watching it out of the corner of my eye. And I felt such a strong need to counter this BS and do what I can to try and help this little girl feel like every other 4-year-old living her best life, even if it was just for a moment. So I ditched my cart, I ran to the front of the store, and stood in a painfully slow line to buy a $50 gift card, all the while hoping they didn't leave before I located them again. With the gift card in hand, I lucked out and found them in the little girl's clothing section, and they were still suffering from other people's rudeness as they tried to shop. I approached the mom, and when I said, "Excuse me," she looked like she was gonna clock me, expecting me to say something rude or mean. But I tried to show nothing but kindness in my eyes, and I just smiled at her. I then said, "I've had this gift card bouncing around in my purse, and I've always forgotten to use it. Would it be okay if I gave it to your daughter?" Well, this mom was shocked to receive any kindness for once. She then smiled and said, "Sure." Now smiling, I knelt next to the little girl, and while giving her the card, I said, "Pretty girls deserve to buy pretty things." And I said this in my best loving mom voice. She shyly took the card from my hand, and then she turned and raced to her mom excitedly to show her. As I turned to walk away, the mom calls out, "Thank you," and I just waved my hand and I said, "You ladies go have fun." And I then smiled and finished up my shopping, giving every rude jerk in the store the stink eye on my way out. They say the best revenge is a life well lived, and if only for a little while, I'm glad I was able to help that sweet little girl live her best life. Wow, I am blown away that people could be this toxic and awful. Like seriously, what kind of monsters would mock a child as she walks around, all because she looks different than anybody else? Like that is some serious levels of crazy that I've just never heard of before, especially in today's modern age. Like just because people look different doesn't mean they're deaf, so you can guarantee that the mom and the kid hear exactly what's going on around them. So honestly, the fact that you stepped up and gave that little girl some kind of hope was probably the best thing you ever could have done, because this treatment she received otherwise was so unbelievably wrong, as she literally did not deserve that even for a second. Am I the jerk for hating on a supposedly wholesome family that I work for, as I truly see them for the hypocrites that they actually are? Because right now I feel like these people are driving me crazy, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work as a waitress at a family-owned cafe, and there's a situation that's been bothering me for a while. There are two people in particular, a woman who is the daughter of the owner and my former manager from years ago, and her husband, who is just kind of the worst person on planet Earth. Almost every single day since I started, the husband calls in the morning to order food to go before he heads out to work. Sometimes he'll come in during the afternoon for a second to go order too, and he doesn't tip and doesn't pay for the food. He gets it for free, while the rest of us waitstaff have to pay half for our meals, and he's never worked there. One day after I made a large to-go order that took a lot of work, he laughed and said that he didn't have the money to tip. After finding $3, he joked and said, "A 300% tip on a $0 meal seems a bit too shabby." His family then laughed, including his sister who works there. It felt really insulting, especially since he didn't pay for the food in the first place, and his to-go order was $40. Recently, he and his wife have been coming in regularly for lunch. For the past 2 weeks, they've been coming in every shift I've worked. They sit down at a table, which in our small cafe with only 6 tables, takes up space that could be used by other well-paying customers, and then they expected us to wait on them. My ex-manager used to handle their orders herself when they came in, but now they expect service like regular customers. They sometimes get up to grab their own things too, which makes it harder for me to know how to handle them. Should I wait on them like regular customers, or should they serve themselves? They've been tipping $5 regardless of the service or the total of their meal, which feels really frustrating considering the effort other waitresses put into serving them. And again, they don't pay pay anything. Now, they are very religious, which again isn't inherently bad, but the way they preach about being good Christians and good people feels so gross to me because it seriously does not match their actions. They treat waitstaff poorly, leaving dirty tables, taking up the small number of tables we have for literally such a long time, and taking away potential customers. And yet they act like they're kind, genuine people who can't see how their actions affect us. The wife was a waitress, so she should know how hard it is to make money and how important it is to tip properly. One incident that bothered me was when the wife took a picture of me at my other job through her car window and texted it to a group chat with her cousin and sister-in-law who also works at the cafe. She then captioned it and said, "New tattoo?" ? And for context, I have a lot of tattoos and I'm working with a tattoo shop on the side. This felt incredibly invasive and judgmental, especially since I don't really know her. It made me uncomfortable and I couldn't help but feel like she was making fun of me for something personal. When the cousin or sister-in-law are around, they act surprised when I ask if they can take their table. It's like they don't understand how their family coming in messes with our ability to make money. I feel like I'm being made out to be the bad guy because I just don't like them. It is difficult to explain to others because they see them as this nice family, but my experience with their actions has been anything but that. I've been struggling with whether my feelings are justified. On the surface, they seem like a nice family, but in reality, they've made me feel disrespected and judged. I don't want to feel like I'm being unreasonable, but I also know I don't like to be treated this way. The sister-in-law that I work with mentioned recently that the husband thinks I don't like him, which yeah, he's right. Some employees who aren't related to the family agree with me that they're annoying and judgmental, while the family members think that I'm being cold or that I'm the reason for the awkwardness. And you know what? It's probably true because I'm not good at pretending to like someone. They came in today again and I did my usual thing, being cordial if they spoke to me but not initiating conversation. Watching them with their baby made me feel guilty, like maybe I'm just hating on a nice family for no reason, but technically they've never been outwardly mean. So am I justified in not liking them? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, as someone who has worked in this exact situation, I do not blame you for feeling this way. These people claim to be these loving Christian people, but then they turn around and don't pay you for your work. And yes, you serving them is work. The fact that they're not tipping you is just like, oh my gosh, can you leave already? I could be making money off of somebody else. Like if they really want to do that, then maybe it's time for a pay increase or something to compensate that. Because yeah, you're right. You've only got 6 tables at this restaurant and they took up one of them. And that's literally preventing people from sitting down and being served. And I love the fact that you've caught on entirely that other people don't see what you're seeing. Because you know the truth about these people. You literally work with them every single day. You see how hypocritical and two-faced these people truly are, and that they're probably just using their religion as some kind of masquerade to hide how they really act. So my God, from someone who has dealt with this exact situation, you are completely justified in saying that these people suck and they are not genuine. And I can also say from personal experience that once I left that job, I felt so much better about myself. I felt like I could breathe again and that I could actually do whatever I wanted. And also, just in case you're wondering, yes, they're absolutely judging you. They either try to make you their project when it comes to like, I don't know, making you join their religion, where they brought you in only because you're covered in tattoos, or they secretly like resent you because you have tattoos, and so they talk crap about you constantly. And this time might be the only time you've actually found out about them treating you poorly. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. These people sound like the worst people on planet Earth to ever work for, and I'm honestly surprised that you haven't found another job. A toxic van driver keeps blocking the pavement on a road where you are not supposed to park on it, making the entire road incredibly dangerous for pedestrians. So I decided to get some revenge by not only getting him in trouble with his boss, but also getting him in trouble with the police. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, in the United Kingdom, it's currently not illegal to park on pavements other than a few locations, and where I'm based is one of the few places you get fined. For a few weeks, there have been vans blocking the pavement on a school-run route, with the vans on the only pavement available and blocking the view. Cars often fly down and around the corner, as it is a route route to sneak in front of a load of traffic if you know about it. So it is pretty dangerous if you're a pedestrian if the walkway is blocked. It started with maybe just one van, but you could still squeeze past, which is not good if you have any mobility issues or aids or any kind of like push chairs. Being a school route, obviously there's pushchair traffic and young kids on bikes and scooters. Quickly though, it was starting to get to 2 vans with at least one blocking the pavement. I would take photos to try and report it, but 2 kids and a job with different walk homes for various reasons meant that I just kept forgetting. This isn't going to be going away anytime soon, as they have parked a trailer on the grass verge for tools and other things. But it was here that my final straw was reached. 2 vans were parked completely across the pavement, with another one parked completely across the pavement over the bumpy literally lines that visually impaired people use. It's right in front of the trailer with a company name on the side of it for once. I had to take my young kids into the middle of the road to get safely to the next side, and just as we crossed, a car came flying around the corner and down the road. And my god, if we had just been 10 seconds later, we could have gotten hurt. I immediately take a photo as normal, and just as I do, a guy comes out of the trailer and works out that I am taking a photo and starts shouting at me. I'm guessing he heard me mention the parking and slowly understood that I'm taking a photo and this was not a good thing for him. He then said to me, "The cars can get by," but I responded by saying, "It's not safe for anyone else though." But he responded by saying, "But the cars can. You can't take a photo of me. I'll call the police." But I said, "Well, don't worry. I'm contacting the authorities about your dangerous parking." And then I walked off taking my kids to school. The guy had a work top on, and it turns out in the edge of the photo, the van had a logo and website on the side, and thankfully my photo caught all of this and how bad his parking job truly was. I then contacted the highways team with all of the photos, local counselor, and his company. Now this guy's company is a big company, so I immediately got one of those marketing automatic emails stating how awesome the company was. I replied by saying, "Hey marketing, sorry but I'm about to mess up your unsubscribe stats thing, and also heads up, this really did happen, and I know marketing teams as I am from one myself, and we can make things happen fast when things go sideways. This all went down this morning with one of your employees at said location, and I've sent it to the following people and will do what I need to do to ensure that the route goes back to being safe again after this morning. If you can work your magic, here's a photo of the guy and the van." Well, less than 10 minutes later, I get a message going, "We're on it and thanks for the heads up. Leave this with us because trust me, it won't happen again." Well, the police get back to me a week later, as it was a non-urgent issue, and said that they were following up on it as well. Well, as a result, they've not been parking on the pavement at all, and all the kids are getting safely to the 2 primary schools and 2 secondary schools, as this is a key route for it. And this guy really thought he could shout and intimidate me, but trust me, I knew exactly how I was going to handle this from the very beginning. Wow, imagine being so entitled that you freak out on someone all because they're trying to do the right thing. This guy knew he was in the wrong for the way he was parking, but instead of being a rational human being and fixing his mistake, he decides to take it out on this person and be like, "Oh, you can't take a picture of me. I'm going to call the police and make this a bigger deal." And it's like, okay friend, we can fight fire with fire. This is no problem for me. Like if you really want to dance and make this into a bigger issue than it needs to be, then by all means, let's do this. So truly, I love the way you handled this because this guy absolutely had it coming. His behavior was atrocious and you did not deserve to be treated this way. And honestly, I really hope he gets in trouble because this behavior is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for offering my friend to do more chores in exchange for cheaper rent, as I was trying to take into account her struggling financial needs? Because after I made this offer, she freaked out on me and said that I was trying to mistreat her. And at this point, I'm honestly not sure if I'm in the wrong. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old female, and my current roommate is moving out of our 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in New Jersey, and my friend, who's also 24, was interested in moving in. The rent is $2,000, but she can only afford about $800 max, including utilities. Now, we've been friends for 10 years, and I thought it would be great to live together, especially since she's been wanting to move out of her parents' house. After crunching the numbers, I figured I could adjust my budget to cover more of the rent. I suggested that she pay $700 and I pay $1,300 in exchange for her taking on 3 chores that I dislike: taking out the garbage, cleaning the stove, and cleaning the bathroom. I would still do other chores, but just not those specific ones. Well, she immediately got upset, saying she didn't want someone her age bossing her around. She said the reason she wanted to move out of her parents' house was so that she could get away from being controlled. She also worried that I'd use the rent difference against her in the future, like controlling how we decorate or saying that I pay more so my opinion matters more, especially during disagreements. I then explained that wasn't my intention and that I thought it was a fair compromise considering she couldn't pay half the rent. She then told me that I sound like a man who would mistreat her. Now for context, I'm a masculine lesbian and she's made comments in the past comparing me to a man, so this comment felt especially intentional. I honestly expected her to turn the offer down because of the rent difference, but I didn't anticipate this reaction. I explained that I thought the compromise was fair and that if she wasn't comfortable with compromise, maybe she wasn't ready to live with others. She then agreed and then said she always knew living together was a bad idea and that she wants to live alone. And mind you, by the way, she reached out to me first about moving in. When I tried to address her comments about comparing me to a man who would mistreat her and how that felt hurtful after a 10-year friendship, she dismissed it and brushed it off as a joke. She said that clearly we wouldn't get along living together because of our personality differences. So was my compromise unreasonable or was she overreacting? Because right now I'm honestly not sure what to do. No, this is so unbelievably toxic from your friend. friend, it's not even funny. Seriously, you're giving her a break when it comes to rent, and all she has to do is pay what, $700? And just take the trash out, clean the bathroom, and clean the stove? Like, my God, if I had that kind of deal, especially in New Jersey, then I would take that in a heartbeat and be like, oh, you got it, no problem here. Because the rent in that state is already astronomical, especially if they have like this place next to New York City. Like, in my opinion, this is a really fair deal. You took in her financial constraints and said, okay, let's see if we can make this work. Because, you know, you guys have been friends for 10 years. So you probably thought in your heart of hearts that yes, this can work and we can figure it out. But man, your friend is an idiot for acting this way. And for her to make that comment about you being a man that would mistreat her, like that also is incredibly toxic, and I'm so sorry that she said that. Like seriously, that was uncalled for and you did not deserve that. So no, overall, you are definitely not the jerk. You did the right thing by even trying to help her out in the first place, since she's the one that reached out to you. And the fact that she reacted this way before she moved in my opinion, is a blessing in disguise. Can you imagine dealing with that after she moved in? My God, that would have been awful. Because this friend sounds like a complete moron, and this would not be someone that you would ever want to live with. My entitled brother demands to propose to his girlfriend at my upcoming wedding. And when I tell him no, he blows up on me and threatens to boycott my wedding. Here's what happened. I'm a 27-year-old male, and I'll start this off by saying that my wedding is scheduled for April because my fiance has always dreamed of a spring wedding. And I really like the idea too. I have an older brother though who's 30 years old. And last Saturday, I was called over to my parents' house to talk about something, but they refused to tell me what it was until I got there. They then sat me down with my brother and told me that my brother wants to use my wedding as the perfect day for him to propose to his girlfriend. I was instantly mad and told them absolutely not, but they ganged up on me. I ended up so enraged to the point that I, one man, somehow backed all three of them into a corner. I told them that if they want to do this, then not only will they all be uninvited, but I'll also cut off the financial support I've been giving monthly since they paid to have my golden child brother go through college by taking out a second mortgage. I landed a decently high-paying job and have been sending $500 to my parents monthly to help ease their mortgage. And I didn't ask for a stake in the ownership of their house either, because I really don't want it. It was entirely out of goodwill, and I can cut it off anytime. I left without speaking anything more to them, but my brother came to my house the next day to yell at me that I ruined his big chance, because now our parents are siding with me and say they'll evict him if he tries to propose at my wedding. He said I was financially blackmailing our parents, and that he just wanted a good chance to propose because he was afraid his girlfriend might leave him soon. I said that was his problem, not mine, because my wedding day is not about him, and if he tries to propose at my wedding, I will have him thrown out. That's not a maybe, but a definite, and I doubt his girlfriend would appreciate her proposal followed up by being tossed out by a bouncer. He yelled a few more choice words at me, then went crying to our surviving grandparent, our maternal grandmother. She then got involved and called me to try and ream me over the phone. No big surprise, but my brother heavily embellished the version of the story that he told her, but she still sided with him after I gave her the real story. She tried to hold her ground, but the verbal backlash I ended up giving her left her crying. That got back to my parents, who were also really upset at me for taking things so far. But I told them I only went that far because I had to, when they were all trying to get me to let my brother use my wedding as a springboard for his proposal. They ended up agreeing with me finally, but still stated they feel like I'm crass. And my brother showed up at my house again to scream at me, telling me that I'm the jerk and that he hopes that I'm happy with myself for not allowing him the opportunity. My fiance knows what my brother tried to do, and she's very angry about it. She's almost ready to have him uninvited if he pursues this any further. Normally, I have a very mild temper, but when it comes to certain people like my brother, parents, and grandmother, I can easily get short with them because of all the past favoritism. My grandmother especially. She always sided with my brother and believed his lies no matter what he did. She's the biggest reason my parents favored my brother too. She kept trying to convince me over the phone to let my brother propose at my wedding that I ended up losing it on her. I ended up speaking with my big brother again and threatened to tell his girlfriend if he was still intending to propose at my wedding without my permission. He took this very poorly and called me an awful person. So I pointed out that my wedding isn't about him. Our parents were there for this and they backed me up. I think my brother did a double take when they did that. My dad pointed out that he'd raised my brother wrong, and that was on him. So from now on, my brother was to show them real respect, and they wanted to get an official lease drawn up for him to pay pay proper rent and utilities. He was only paying them $300 a month without contributing to utilities or food. And if he doesn't want to pay, he can move out and they'll rent his room to someone else. My brother turned to our mom for help, but she agreed with my dad. He looked like he was having a conniption fit and then left the house. He came back after a couple of hours, but spoke to no one and locked himself inside of his room. 2 days later, my brother announced he was moving in with grandma because she invited him. And our parents basically told him that if he wants to live with her, then go right ahead. My brother responded to this by saying that we all hate him for just wanting to propose to his girlfriend. But my parents pointed out that it's not that he wanted to propose, but where he wanted to do it, and he would get no support for it. He's refusing to talk to our parents now, and my grandmother did try to call me again, but it ended up with me telling her that my brother will not be allowed to propose at my wedding, plain and simple. So he can just get over it or just not show up. And the same goes for her. I ended up calling her out for her favoritism towards my brother since we were kids, which she tried to deny at first, but couldn't keep doing so because of how much I'd pointed it out. She ended up crying again, while I told her that if she keeps trying to insist on this, then she won't be coming to my wedding. She begged me not to rescind her invite, but still said she doesn't understand why I couldn't let my brother have his way before ending the call. My fiance is 100% on my side and is fully ready to remove my brother and grandmother from the wedding. My grandmother hasn't called again, and she's not talking to my parents either. My guess is my brother went crying to her again to tell her mommy and daddy weren't enabling him anymore, so she offered for him to move in with her. But there's literally nothing she can do to sway me, and I think my last conversation with her made her realize that. Now, I didn't wish to tell my brother's girlfriend, but in a roundabout way, she found out what was going on. So she ended up tearing my brother a new one, and he still tried to justify himself to her. That's when she told him that they were through and cut all contact with him. My brother, of course, blamed me, even though his girlfriend said that she's been ready to leave him for a while now, and if he had tried to propose no matter where, she would have told him no. So that's it. My brother showed up at my place one more time to have a fit and said to me that he's boycotting my wedding. He actually thought he had leverage that he and grandma won't go. I said I wouldn't miss him and that he's in his 30s now and he needs to grow up. Our parents have cut him off and are no longer supporting him, and they're already repainting his room to rent it to somebody else. And they plan on renting out my old bedroom as well because they need the money after the financial hole he left them in after dropping out of college just to mooch off of them for a while and then get a degree with online college later, and then barely paying any rent while also making them pay for his food and utilities despite having a good job. They spent the world on him, and he hasn't been the least bit grateful. That made my brother just shut down and leave, and since then we've not heard a peep out of him. And yes, I have very good security hired for the wedding, and they'll toss my brother out like bouncers in a heartbeat if he decides to show up. How insane is that? The audacity of someone to try and come to your wedding just to propose and take away from your special day is literally so disgusting. You have to be so unbelievably entitled to try and pull that off. That's so disturbing to me. It's nice to see that everyone in the family, for the most part, eventually came around and sided with the original poster. I can't imagine anybody trying to justify another family member proposing at your wedding. That's so disgusting and inappropriate. So hopefully everything goes well and this entitled brother doesn't show up, because otherwise there's just gonna be trouble. I have been lying about my education and past professional experience to the guy I've been dating for 6 months, and I don't know what to do. First, some context. When I was 18, I started studying in university, but back then I was severely depressed and ended up staying longer than necessary and still didn't finish the degree. After 5 years, I went to another university, finished this second degree, and now I've finished my master's related to this new field and will start working next week. Back in March of 2022, 4 months after the end of my past relationship, I decided to try and date again, but I wasn't looking for anything serious. I ended up meeting this guy in a dating app who was extremely accomplished, intelligent, highly educated, and so forth. He asked about my academic background and professional experience, and instead of telling him I never finished my first degree and ended up studying somewhere else, which is why I have zero relevant professional experience at this age, I ended up lying by saying I had actually completed my degree at my first university and had worked for 1 year at a company I had never worked at before I decided to study again. I felt extremely self-conscious about my background, and I just assumed he wouldn't be interested in me if he knew the truth. But more than that, I honestly wasn't expecting that we would still be dating 6 months later. We are not exactly official, but we are exclusive. I haven't met his family or anything, but I did meet his best friend last week, and he told this best friend that I had worked at this supposed company, so I ended up lying to his best friend as well, as I definitely did not work at that company. I just don't know what to do. This is the only lie I told, and it's such a stupid one, only because I felt extremely insecure for having failed that first degree and being a 29-year-old with no relevant professional experience. He's becoming well known in his professional field, and I'm just starting my career now, so it just feels like we are several worlds apart. Or maybe this is just my insecurities talking. The problem is that I'm starting to really like him, and I find myself missing him more often than not. Either way, I am extremely embarrassed now. I want to come clean because this lie is eating me alive, but I am afraid that he would never be able to forgive me for that. Maybe if I told the truth in the beginning, but not now. He is an extremely honest person and takes these kinds of things very seriously. What should I do? I honestly don't think it's too late to come clean and tell him the truth. I really think it would be better to do it sooner than later. Sure, it's gonna be embarrassing. It's never easy owning up to a lie, but you know what? You're gonna feel a lot better when you come clean. And if you actually see a possibility of some kind of future with this guy, then you definitely need to come clean. My parents have given me an ultimatum, stating that if I go to college with my girlfriend, they will disown me, and I honestly don't know what to do. For some context, me and my girlfriend have been together for almost 2 years, and the situation is quite dire. The costs are so high where it is, and we're just trying to get it figured out. My girlfriend and I thought it would be wise, not just for our happiness sake, but for money reasons, if we found a room and a small apartment together and split it amongst ourselves. That way, there was no wasting transportation just to see each other, and we would get to spend more time together. And we can help each other with our assignments, while having a shoulder to lean on while we're in the city for general reasons. I brought this up to my mom, saying I think it would be the best idea for saving money, and that I would like to be with my girlfriend and to be happy. But she took this very offensively, getting very mad at me. She started shouting, saying it's very stupid and wants me to get a room alone. And she doesn't care if it costs a lot more. Due to my mom not working and a large family, we are entitled to a grant that pays off my college fees. She uses this against me, saying if I move in with my girlfriend, she will cut off everything with me and disown me in the process. My dad is also agreeing with my mother and is also very aggressively against this. Fast forward to a day after this argument, and my mother has taken it upon herself to book me student accommodations, all while I was working, and barely consulting me, besides asking for information over text messaging. She has now also already paid a deposit, saying there's no going back now. And now my girlfriend is left looking for a room by herself. And this is in a city where it's very hard to find places. And even if you do find a place, it's still very expensive. My mother has gone as far as to ask me to write a piece of paper out stating that I am not moving in with her for college. My girlfriend's family are okay with the thought of us moving in together. However, my mother and father threaten if I do so, I am going to be disowned from the family and they will cut me off from my grant. Anyone have any advice on what to do in this situation? Because I'm honestly not sure what to do. Just so everyone's aware, the person in this story is 19 years old. They are an adult, they can make decisions for themselves, and they've made the decision that, hey, I want to live with my girlfriend. But his controlling parents are deciding what he can and can't do with his life, which in my opinion is just not fair. They should not have a say in what he can and cannot do and where he can and cannot live. That, in my opinion, is not acceptable. The fact that the parents are acting like this just seems like a really weird stance to take. I mean, is there something about this girl that makes him say, no, we do not want our son living with her? It's bad enough that his girlfriend has to try and find a place to live now, but it could have been easier if they were looking together and shared the cost in this big city. Obviously, there's probably a lot of nuance to the grants that you're receiving, but I would personally go to financial aid like today and see if there's any way you can take control of the grants that you have received, as well as possibly pushing your parents aside. That is, if that's what you want to do. Because this controlling attitude and the way they're trying to dictate where you can and cannot live, in my opinion, is super inappropriate. So hopefully this gets worked out, and hopefully you're able to find some kind of accommodation for your girlfriend, even if you can't live with her. Because that's going to be super expensive either way, and that's really not fair for her to be left in the dark, all because your parents are super controlling and being really weird. My wife and I were planning on living in Europe for 3 months, and then suddenly, with less than a week to go, my wife backs out, and I really don't know what to do. The title says it all. My wife and I have plans to live in 3 cities in Europe for a month each, and we are leaving in less than a week. My wife says she's changed her mind suddenly, but that I should still go. We've gone around a few times, semi-arguing about it, and she she gives no real reason other than not feeling up to it anymore. Plane tickets were by far the biggest cost and hurdle to this trip, which we bought about 6 months ago. So it's not as if she could just change her mind and join me later without it costing who knows how much. We've done this twice in the past, once to Puerto Rico and once to Colombia, and she has always said that she loved it. Hence why we spent a little bit extra to go to Europe this time around. I'm not sure how to take this sudden and unexpected change of heart, as well as her apparently thinking all of a sudden that living apart for 3 months is no big deal. She studied in China for a semester during grad school, and we both agreed it felt way too long to be out of touch with each other's everyday lives. Canceling everything completely at this stage would result in next to no refunds for the most of it, and basically wasting about $20,000. I mean, I am fine going by myself if I have to, and it's not as if I'd get lonely or bored without her. I'd still be working 3 12-hour days, and the extrovert hidden inside of me has no self-confidence issues when it comes to sightseeing on my own. But it's somewhat of a letdown, knowing I would be having all these potentially memorable experiences while she decided to stay home for an undefined reason. Should I insist on pushing for a real reason on why she's changing her mind? Is it truly possible she has no real reason? Again, it's completely baffling to me, but trying to dig deeper leads nowhere except arguing in circles. Should I just go anyway and leave her decision a forever mystery? I feel as if this is somehow going to come back and bite me one day, though she assures me it's all her and nothing against me. What should I do? This seems super sketchy to me. Why would somebody all of a sudden say, nah, I don't want to go to Europe for 3 months, after spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on it? That just seems really sketchy in my opinion. There is very clearly something going on that you're not aware of, and that is honestly not a good sign. Because I know if I was in your shoes, I would definitely still be going on this trip. After all that money spent, there's no way I'm not going. That's money straight down the drain just because my partner suddenly decides, I don't want to go. That's really selfish and unfair. Maybe that's just me, let me know in the comment section. But to all of a sudden, a week away from when you're supposed to leave, suddenly tell somebody that no, I don't want to live abroad for 3 months. And yes, I'm fully aware we spent $20,000 is incredibly toxic and so disturbing to me. And worst of all, she can't give you a solid reason as to why she doesn't want to go. You've gone on trips to Puerto Rico, you've gone on trips to Colombia, and you both feel after her trip to China that no, we don't want to be apart that long again. So I think it's time for you to put on your investigation hat and really get to the bottom of this, because canceling your plans all of a sudden is not fair. And unless she can give you a solid reason as to why she doesn't want to go, she's literally just being selfish. Today, I messed up by telling my boyfriend that I didn't like his dad. So I've been dating my boyfriend for a little over a year now. We have several differences in terms of family, culture, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Both our families had a tough time accepting each other, but we have put in significant efforts to ensure that we both are respected and accepted by our respective families. His father commented on my weight the very first time he saw me. He also has a problem with the kind of clothes that I wear and my overall lifestyle, which mostly has to be kept a secret from his family because they won't be able to accept my independent Western lifestyle. I live alone with my dog away from my abusive family. I do not speak to my father, and I try to be detached from my overly emotionally dependent mother. My partner is my sole emotional support, and he tries his best to be by me, but he is also too attached to his father, who is 73 years old and frail and needs to be taken care of. Because of his conservative father, I barely get any time with him, since he has to cater to him most of the time. Whenever I visit his place, his sister also must be present, because otherwise, apparently it would be disrespectful to the father. I cannot wear what I am comfortable in, I cannot display affection towards my boyfriend, or be myself overall. The father also has a problem with him pampering me too much, as it conflicted with their cultural expectations. Recently, I had a surgery and my movements are restricted. I would have loved for him to take care of me, but he could only see me for a few hours on the weekends because he cannot leave his dad alone. I also cannot go and stay with him at his place because his sister won't be there. To be fair, my dog is also very active, and that's kind of dangerous for his father. As a result of all of this, my anger has definitely been piling up on his father, but I ended up blasting it all on my partner. Now I feel like absolute garbage because I know he loves his father, and what I had to say did not bode well with him. I'm also questioning my overall future with him because he is too attached to his family, while I do not see myself being close to anyone but him. Also, he wants to get married, have a family, and have kids, as well as give his father grandchildren, but I don't want kids at all. We did discuss kids before getting into the relationship, and it wasn't a deal breaker for him because we really liked each other. It still really isn't. However, I feel that he would be more at peace in a traditional family setting overall, especially considering how his father acts. I'm now at a point where I don't know if I should just break up with him immediately. My head says yes, but my heart says no, because the abandoned child in me loves the kind of love and care he gives me, and I'm scared I'll never find it again. What should I do? I gotta be honest, it doesn't sound like you two are good for each other. I understand that you don't want to be separated from somebody that you love, especially your significant other, because of like previous trauma and stuff like that, but it seems like you two have very different goals. Your boyfriend very much loves his dad. He wants to be there for him and to take care of him, maybe out of obligation, but either way he wants to be there for him. On the other hand, you don't like him being around his family that much, and you only see yourself ever only loving him, which can be okay, but I mean that just doesn't seem fair for him. So he's got to give up his entire family just to only love you? It seems like there's a lot of little things that are not matching up that really need to be considered in this relationship. So hopefully you can find some kind of resolution to this, because from the outside looking in, and how you've described the small things that keep interfering with your relationship, it just does not seem like this is going to last in the long term. My boyfriend is addicted to playing GTA role-playing online and plays it 12 hours a day for 7 days a week. Things have gotten so bad that he refuses to work and has basically quit his job, and I honestly don't know what to do. The title says it all. My boyfriend of 5 years is addicted to GTA role-playing, and it's ruining our relationship. He spends 12 hours a day playing, he has no job, and he doesn't help around the house. I feel taken for granted, unloved, and I'm not sure what I can do to help him get a life. For lack of a better words, I'm kinda lost here. For a bit of background, he's always been a gamer. He would play his Xbox a few hours each day, and sometimes I would watch for a while, and sometimes I would just do my own thing. It never fazed me. I found comfort just being in his presence, and him chatting with his friends over the headset never bothered me either. Sometimes it was just some background noise, and sometimes it was quite entertaining. At the start of this year, he got a PC, and immediately got into GTA roleplaying. I was happy for him at first, because we used to watch YouTube videos of people playing roleplay servers, and always had a laugh, so I thought it was cool that he would get to join in on the fun. But things started to slowly unravel. When it comes to his job, he started calling in sick for work a lot. He's relatively new to this job and career as well, so he would just be sitting at home playing GTA, and he did this so much where he used up all of his sick leave and holiday leave. Maybe it's a coincidence, I don't know, but he tells me that he doesn't want to work there because of his anxiety and fear of heights. The job is not on the ground level, by the way, and that does check out for the most part. He is scared of heights, so I can understand that maybe this job is a bad choice after all, and he should try and find something else. But the only problem is that he never finds something else, which is starting to cause me a lot of stress. I only have a casual position at my job. If I'm sick or want time off, I don't get paid, so I feel a lot of pressure. At first, my approach was casual, when bringing up the topic of him finding something, and he never disagreed, always telling me something like, yeah, my friend wants to get me a job at a certain company, and that he's apparently waiting for him to let him know or something like that. The casual approach kind of wore off after about a month, and since then, it's been endlessly nagging on my part. It's been like 8 months now, so I'm at a loss, but he always tells me that he has a friend who's getting him into something soon, and always just nods his head and agrees, like, yeah, I need a job. And I'm starting to think that maybe this is just his way of trying to get me to shut up. When it comes to our living environment, it has always been a bit of a struggle getting him to help around the house. He worked long physical hours, so I did pick up a lot of the slack at home, and only had to hound him to help me out every once in a while. But now, if not prompted or nagged by me, he does nothing. Literally nothing. And he's home all day. I get home from work, and for the next couple of hours, I'm straight into housework mode before I even allow myself to sit down and relax. He doesn't lift a finger unless I ask him to, and most of the time when I do ask him to help out, it takes 2 to 3 business days with countless reminders before he does the stupid task, and he normally does this with an attitude towards me. Our relationship has also taken a hit. He gets moody at me very often, especially when I try to talk to him about anything and everything. It seems to me, at least, that just the sound of my voice triggers him nowadays. Most likely because mainly all I do is nag him to help out or just to get a job, and he's sick of hearing it. But I'll come home and I'll come in and try to say hello or just to talk about my day, but God forbid I interrupt his gaming session. He gets so mad, and for what reason? I will even leave him alone for a few hours just to try again, only to then get the same reaction from him. Most nights I fall asleep without him by my side, and when my alarm goes off in the morning, he's still on the computer. I've never been really all that clingy. He was always the clingy one before, and I would have to scream for some personal personal space. But now I barely get to sleep next to him at all, and it hurts me knowing that he would rather be in another reality, rather in bed with me in this reality, actually being able to touch and hold each other. I miss him and I love him, and I'm trying so hard to put myself in his position. I went through a few years where I was severely depressed, and my lifestyle was very similar, except instead of gaming, it was just binge watching shows and movies. And instead of no job, I just cut my hours back at work to make just enough money to survive. But that's all I wanted. I didn't want to be out of the house even a minute longer. I'm wondering if he is going through the same thing, and I don't know how to help. When I was going through something similar, anyone who tried to help out or talk some sense into me never really broke through. I was either too lazy to listen, or I simply could not be bothered to go through with it. I eventually came out of it because I decided to do so. So I can relate, but I just don't know how to help him. All of this week, I'm sleeping in a different bed. I have told him that I'm unhappy, and I'm tired of having the same conversations with him. A part of me hopes that he will realize that our relationship is falling apart, and he will start to make some changes. I still hear him in the computer room from morning until the next morning, like nothing has changed. So at this point, I really don't know what to do. I gotta be honest, I'm actually really surprised that the original poster is even with this person anymore. This person's made it abundantly clear that they would rather be playing video games than spending time or helping out with their girlfriend. Like, this is just inappropriate. When your gaming hobbies, or any other kind of hobby for that matter, gets in the way of your financial obligations of work, as well as trying to provide for yourself or the person that you love that you live with, then that hobby or activity needs to go, or at least done in moderation. To spend 12 hours a day and sacrifice your job just to play GTA is really an unwise decision, because then your significant other's just going to be left out of your life. And that's exactly what's happening here. This boyfriend needs to get a job and get to work, as well as start helping out around the house. He is neglecting his real life in exchange for a fake life. And if he has any hope of trying to salvage his relationship, then it's probably time to turn off the PC and start listening to his girlfriend, because otherwise she's probably gonna leave. My boyfriend has been draining me emotionally, and I don't know what to do. For the most part, overall, my boyfriend is a good guy. He's loyal, gentle, hardworking, supportive, considerate, and a handyman. Two of his ex-girlfriends have dumped him and cheated on him. He has a lot of emotional baggage too. We've been dating for about 3 years now. I moved in with him a month ago after doing a long-distance relationship for a while. While doing the long-distance relationship, he would call me 3 times a day, and he would frequently ask me if I loved him. He worries if I am cheating on him all the time. He has my location and my phone password. One time, he went through my iPad to see if I was cheating on him, even though I wasn't. He also has weird comments about what I wear. He says he doesn't like it when I wear crop tops or choker necklaces, because he worries I'll get too much attention from other men. I told him I don't like feeling judged, and I just want to express my style freely. Ever since moving in with him, he comes home frequently in a bad mood. Don't get me wrong, I have bad moods too, but he frequently comes home in a bad mood and just unloads it on me. I've been working part-time and have applied for other jobs since moving in. I clean, I cook, I do laundry, and I take care of the pets while working part-time. He comes home in a bad mood either because of work, his truck that needs some repairs, house repairs, his family, finances, his health, or it's just about something with our pets. Over the weekend, his parents filed for a divorce, and I spent the whole weekend comforting him and emotionally supporting him. Obviously, I feel terrible for him, as well as his family, so the least I could do was just to be there for him. He mostly complains about money. For example, last week he asked me when I would switch to working full-time because he isn't doing well financially due to his expensive medical bills, mortgage, car repairs, and broken AC in the house. I tell him that I understand his frustrations. I offered to find him assistance programs for his Crohn's disease. I offered to help cover some of his bills. Also, I do help pay for the groceries and pet supplies. Today, I came home and he was in a bad mood still because of the pets. The cats had gone to the bathroom on the carpet, as well as on our guest bedroom and in our closet, so he had to rip out the carpet while I cleaned the bed. Then he complained about how expensive the new carpet will be, which then led him to complain about his job, then about his life in general. It's a cycle, it seems like. It left me feeling emotionally drained. I have been comforting him nearly every single day since I've moved in. I'm just dealing with his negativity all of the time. Recently, I've been experiencing depression symptoms. My mom pointed out how it seems like I've been declining mentally. I feel bad for how stressful his life is, and I want to be there for him, but I have a feeling this is how our relationship is always going to be, where I'm constantly comforting him and validating him on a daily basis. He means well, but I fear our relationship will bring me down and make me mentally decline even worse. years. I even have the urge to break up with him because of his negativity, but I feel like I'm being selfish. What should I do? I think it's time to explain to him that you can't possibly be the only resource that he can have when it comes to working out his feelings. This is obviously draining you of your energy, and you feel like it's tearing you apart limb from limb, and I can completely understand that. It seems like he has a lot of hurdles in his life, and it looks like he's trying to navigate it as best as he can. But he needs to understand that you can't be the only person to bear this burden. For your own mental well-being, you need to explain to him fully and completely that the way he's been treating you is just not fair. He needs to learn how to help himself and get treatment for his mental health issues, because otherwise this is only going to cause more problems in your relationship. And I think you have it right. If this is the way this is going to be, your mental health really will decline, and that's not fair for you. So have this conversation with him and tell him that he needs to figure this out, because otherwise this is just not going to go well. My boyfriend will not only not let me meet his family after 3 years of being together, but when I try to break up with him, he won't let me leave. And now I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. We broke up a few times during year 2, but we've been together all of the first and third years. Neither of us come from very good families or homes. Despite that, he refused to allow me to meet any of his family. Not his dad, mom, brother, sister, anyone. He met my parents and siblings after about 2 years one time. Our relationship has been pretty back and forth, and I am the one who did the breaking up each time. So I kept telling myself that he never let me meet them because he was afraid I'd leave him again. The thing is, I've left him each time because he won't let me into his life. I can't meet his family, we never go on dates or do anything together. He doesn't let me hang out with his friends, nothing. I'd beg him to change and he wouldn't, so I would leave even though it was destroying me, because I loved him more than anything. We would both date other people, but always ended up back together. Or he would text me these long messages, basically apologizing or telling me that he's depressed and that I'm the only one that fixes it, explaining that he would do better, and then I would come back. The last time when we broke up, he put on his Tinder bio that he would tell his mom he met the girl of his dreams on Tinder. That felt like a punch to the gut, because I'm still not good enough to meet her. We've been together again for a while, and I don't want to bring up the Tinder thing because I don't want him to get mad at me. The last time I brought up meeting his family a few weeks ago, he put a hole in the wall with a chair because I wouldn't drop, wanting to know why. I'm trying to be understanding, but at the same time, I'm just hurting. My uncle passed away a while ago, and he was a lot like a dad to me. I asked him to come with me to the funeral just because it's so small and not a lot of people are gonna be there, but he refused. He went to a football game with his friends instead and actually Snapchatted me from it. If I try to talk about it or threaten to leave, he then threatens to go to drastic measures or tell me that no one will ever love me like he loves me. Things like that. His friends know we're dating and they already knew me before we started dating, but he won't let me around them either. It feels like he wants me in a cage sometimes and completely separate from everyone else in his life, but he doesn't want me to leave him. I don't think he's seeing anyone else because it took him a long time to even start dating me officially. It was almost half a year before we even called each other boyfriend and girlfriend. I love him so much, and I know I'm not perfect, but I'm at a loss on what I really should do in this situation. This guy sounds really toxic, to be completely honest with you. It also sounds like he has some serious anger management issues. I mean, he put a chair through a wall all because you asked why you couldn't see his family. Like, that's really weird. And you've been together off and on for 3 years. It's crazy to me that you haven't met anyone from his family, or he doesn't bring you around his friends at all. But here's the thing, if you don't feel like this relationship is gonna work out, and in my opinion, I don't see this working out, you can dump him and move on with your life. You don't need his permission or anything like that. You can just leave. And to be honest, from the outside looking in, his behavior seems very controlling and manipulative. Someone who actually cares about you wouldn't try to go out of their way just to make you feel bad. So in my opinion, if you really did want to leave him, you totally can do that, because this does not sound like a healthy relationship in the slightest. And it might be in your best interest to move on and find somebody else, regardless of how he feels. My ex is demanding closure from our breakup, but I refused, and now I don't know what to do. I have an ex from a very recent breakup. Before the breakup, I took a week to think about it. We were together for 6 months, and I was unhappy with us half of that time. I tried to fix things and work on communication, but this was exhausting and stressful. I couldn't continue down this path. We got into it a lot and had a lot of arguments. If we made up or tried to let it go, the argument would appear again. So I stopped letting it go and I just held my ground. After much self-reflection and review of records, I saw myself making an effort to improve communication explanation with clearer and more precise statements. But their positions were contradictory. They were moving the goalposts, splitting hairs, and constantly reframing what they were arguing about, even from a frame they introduced in the first place. This became so stressful, and our common ground simply eroded. I spoke with them about this honestly, and said all of the things in this post. While many promises were made, our arrangement became no more coherent, so I ended things. Now, my ex wants closure, and I feel all my reasons are on our records. I spilled everything out from any angle I could. I am just simply tired. Although they would deny it, I feel like the bids for closure are just an attempt to cling to me. They lashed out and presented me a lot of negative speculations as to my motivations for breaking up, and all of these are just untrue. And if I responded point by point, I'd just be defending myself again. I need the pointless arguments to just stop, so I refuse to engage. If they are not attempting to resume troubleshooting and reestablish the relationship, they may be acting on impulse, maybe out of a desire to suck me into all of it once again. I'm giving them simple reasons why I didn't want to keep this relationship going. I even said that I was unhappy in the relationship and that it just wasn't working out. We were not compatible. But this is not the closure, apparently, that they want. They want an explanation that we both could understand and agree to accept. I do not believe this can be accomplished with someone who does not wish to be dumped, and with who I have a history of being unable to establish a coherent disagreement. Any non-reductive complaints I had while we were still together were not understood or addressed meaningfully, and this pain from not being seen is not something I wish to relive as some kind of attempt to provide closure. I also believe my ex does not want to accept the breakup, which would prohibit them from understanding or agreeing to the closure if I tried to build one for them. I am not sure if I'm a believer that closure can be given in a relationship. When I had my heart broken, it took me a lot of time to review the patterns in the old relationships and finally understand why it ended. I have always had to create my own closure, and that's just the way it is. But it begs the question, am I being irresponsible or heartless by refusing to engage with their speculations and demands? What should I do? It sounds like your ex is incredibly toxic, and I don't blame you for cutting them off. And I think you're right. They don't want to go back just for closure. They want to try and come back just so they can get the last word. They don't like how things were broken off, so they want to try and come back into this and start slinging mud once again. They only want to try and hurt you, in my opinion, and that's just not worth your time. You quite literally don't owe them anything. And you know what? It's not in your control how they're gonna get closure. If what you've told them isn't enough, and after highlighting all the reasons why you broke this off, then that's their problem to figure this out, not you. So in my opinion, just keep going the course, because either way, they are out of your life, and based on the way they're acting right now, that's probably a really good thing. My husband has anger issues and thinks that I should just accept it, and I really don't know what to do. I recently got married less than a month ago, and I've known my husband for 3 years before marriage. He has ADHD and anxiety, but didn't display anger until a year into our relationship. At its worst, his anger has included shoving me, throwing things at me or around me, breaking things, and punching walls. And one instance, he tried to yank the car keys out of my hands, which resulted in my fingers getting injured. I am getting more and more fed up with his anger. Upon my insistence, he started therapy about a year ago, but I've barely noticed any improvement. He gets angry over the slightest things. Like if I ask him a question in a noisy environment, it will cause him to slam his phone down or throw it, or clench his fist or bite his lip really hard. And then he'll say that he needs some space and he will leave for hours. And this is all over something very trivial and often of no fault of mine. Because of these anger issues, I have grown quite fearful of him and often anticipate his anger. And due to this, I've developed anxiety and my depression has worsened. The incident that happened today was that I was talking with him and he must have wanted to say something, and then all of a sudden he slammed the laptop shut, clenched his fists, and bit down on his lip hard. I asked him what was wrong, and he said he forgot what he wanted to say. I became quite depressed because I felt like I shouldn't say anything to him, or I might anger him further, and I felt I was the reason for his anger. I went to my bedroom and he followed me to comfort me. At this point, I explained to him that his anger scared me and made me depressed. The problem I'm having is with his reaction to me saying this. He said he was just feeling frustrated, that his reaction was normal, that it isn't comparable to his usual anger, and that apparently I should be commending him for controlling his anger better than usual. I don't know. It didn't feel too different from him punching walls, to be honest. I just want him to not express his anger like this. Am I in the wrong here? What should I do? You are not in the wrong, and I've got to be honest, his anger is really really scary. I mean, sure, today he's throwing stuff at you and breaking things and punching the wall, but tomorrow it could become a lot more violent, if you know what I mean. And I really don't think this is a healthy relationship. Literally nothing about his behavior is in any way, shape, or form normal, and you do not deserve this type of treatment. I mean, he's throwing things at you and he gets aggressive. That's absolutely unacceptable. He got mad at you because he forgot what he was gonna say. He slammed his laptop shut, clenches his fists. I mean, this just seems like really reckless behavior, as well as really abusive. And worst of all, it sounds like he does not want to change, and he's trying to justify his outbursts as him trying to change and be better, when in reality, this is just not the case. I think you really need to consider your safety in a time like this, because this man is definitely not stable, and I would be hard-pressed to think that this won't turn bad very quickly. So in my opinion, it's time to reevaluate your relationship, because I don't see this problem going away overnight, and unless there's some kind of crazy intervention, I just see this going really badly, really fast. My mother-in-law extorted my wife for years by using my wife's younger siblings against her to guilt trip her into doing whatever she said. Here's what happened. So my mother-in-law has 7 children. My wife is the second oldest, and along with her older brother, are children from a previous relationship. Their stepdad is, to put it lightly, a very terrible human being. Nevertheless, he's the father of their 5 youngest half-siblings, and he is also a decently wealthy landowner in their small town on the Mexican side of the US-Mexican border, so there's nothing that they can really do about him. Now, I could write an essay on why this man is so terrible, but I will stick to the main one. This terrible, no good, poor excuse for a stepfather would constantly harass and hurt my wife in really inappropriate ways ever since they met when she was 4 or 5 years old. Eventually, he took things way too far when she was about 10 years old, and when her mom found out 5 to 6 years later, the lady's bright idea was to simply send her daughter away to live with her grandma in the United States. As a side note, my wife and her brother are Mexican, but they were born in the US. It was while she was living with said grandma that my wife eventually met me at our high school prom, and after about a year, we became a couple. Unfortunately, the grandma is a special kind of social conservative, the hypocritical, manipulative, and controlling kind, but not in a political way. Once the grandma found out, she instantly demanded that my then girlfriend break up with me, saying all kinds of lies about me, like how I was gonna dump her as soon as I've used her, or that I was only with her so she could pay for my college tuition. Instead of giving in to her grandma's demands, she held her ground and told her no, so the grandma kicked her out, and she moved in with my family. While she's been living with me, my mother-in-law continued to have no contact with her, and occasionally asked my wife for money. Now, I should point out that it was often my wife's own initiative to send her mom money to help out her mom and siblings with basic necessities such as food, clothing, and household supplies. The stepdad was notoriously very cheap. All the while, this undeserving man would hold his children as emotional hostages through my mother-in-law just to try and extort emotional concessions out of my wife, such as getting her to tell him happy birthday, to act more as a daughter to him, or to apologize for hurting his feelings on social media. This type of garbage would play out for a few years on end, until eventually my mother-in-law finally found the gall to move out of his house when the stepdad tried replacing her with a younger woman. During this period, my wife would send even more money to her mom so she could afford rent and other living expenses until she could get a job and get on her feet. Unfortunately, this period of independence was rather short, as she returned back into the stepdad's arms for the children's sake, as she put it. And this was all within 2 months' time. Additionally, this woman had decided that the best time to tell her beloved daughter that she cares so much about that she was moving back in with this heinous excuse for a human being was on her birthday of all days. Things got even worse when she announced that they got married shortly afterwards. Naturally, they stopped talking for a while. After making up some time later, my mother-in-law began pushing my wife and brother-in-law to earnestly begin the process of obtaining green cards for herself and their siblings. All 3 of us largely suspected that the real reason she wanted them was so the stepdad could also get papers and re-enter the US. But we continued with the process anyways, mostly because of the kids. After all, they have no part in whatever beef is going on between us adults, even if some of them are adults now. For context, the stepdad used to live in our city of residence. It's where he met my mother-in-law after all. But he was deported after serving time for a violent squabble involving some pretty violent acts. My mom was also involved in some pretty terrible things while in the US as well, so she had a record from her time in the States. In the 2 years since they they've started the paperwork, they were somewhat successful in getting their mom's charges dropped by use of some sort of plea deal, since the case happened so long ago. However, instead of being grateful for all the hard work and money her 2 children have put into this, my mother-in-law became increasingly impatient with how long the process was taking, as if she was owed all of their effort by the very fact that she gave birth to them and raised them. Her impatience continued to escalate, even as my brother-in-law faced increasing difficulty in affording the legal fees. Eventually, a simple clarification question on this one financial matter led my mother-in-law to go into a full pity party meltdown, stating how ungrateful her kids were and that my brother-in-law was starting to act like his stepdad, saying that he's being cheap and hypocritical, as well as other bizarre lies and accusations. Still, even with that outburst, they continued chugging along with the process, all for the sake of their siblings. It wasn't until my brother-in-law fell on harder times did the process stop completely. My mother-in-law continued demanding this one letter from our local police department to continue the process on her own, but my wife and I simply had no inclination to oblige her anymore. Soon enough, my mother-in-law became desperate enough to reach out to her estranged cousin to obtain the all-important letter from us. Now, this was a complete revelation to both of us. We had absolutely no idea that my wife had any other family members living in our city. Up to that point, the only blood family my wife had any sort of contact with was her mom, her venomous grandma, and her also venomous aunt of the same age. My mother-in-law's cousin was nothing like them. She seemed more normal and stable. Eventually, she invited us over to her house, where the larger extended family, my wife's grandma's brother and sister, and some of their children, welcomed us into the family. It was absolutely amazing to see them so eager to have her rejoin their family. They would trade some stories as well as jokes that she hadn't heard ever since she first left the United States. I am quite hopeful that she can finally have the family she's always wanted that's actually related to her. Anyway, my mother-in-law's cousin suggested we hand over the letter to her on the condition that my mother-in-law does not ask anything of us ever again. So far, my mother-in-law hasn't contacted us ever since, not even for my wife's latest birthday, which is probably a good thing. The cousin and family had been encouraging my wife to get in contact with her real dad, who also happens to live in our city with another family of his own, all so she can get a hold of the real story behind what happened between him and my mother-in-law's breakup. They believe that there's likely more to the story than what my wife had been told about her dad, and given the enormous amount of lies and deceit that often spews out of my wife's grandma, I am completely unsurprised that this could possibly be the case. However, my wife is in absolutely no hurry to get in contact with her dad, but she has reached out, just waiting on a reply. After all, the man had never reached out to her, and now he was another family with a different woman. So hopefully everything works out for me and my wife, and she's able to find some kind of closure for her family. It's crazy how toxic this mother-in-law was acting towards her daughter as well as her family, literally hanging her siblings over her head just so this mother-in-law and her crazy abusive stepfather could get back in this country. And honestly, I don't blame them for cutting them off. So hopefully this mother-in-law never contacts her again, because she's incredibly toxic and they do not need this kind of energy in their life. I just found out that I'm ruining another relationship as I discovered that I'm the other woman. I have known this guy since high school. He was a few years older than me, but we were in activities together, so we became friends. We stayed friends the past few years, and even kind of became friends with benefits at one point. I would back off the times that I knew he was in a relationship, but every time they would fall out, we would reconnect. Over the past 6 months or so, we have gotten a lot closer. We talk and call every single day. We're always incredibly flirty with each other, and we have very deep and very real conversations about the future and what we want. We haven't hung out more than a handful of times, which I thought was odd, but honestly, I understood we were both busy and thought we were taking it slow. About a month ago, I found out that he has been in a relationship for almost 2 years. They apparently live together, they share the lease, and have shared funds. He finally told me now because he says he wants to leave her for me. What do I do from here? The past month since I found out, I've honestly acted like it was a dream and continued to talk to him, but it's really hitting me now. I don't want to ruin their relationship, and I don't want to be the reason he has to uproot his life. I honestly don't even know if I could fully commit knowing the circumstances it came from. I told him exactly how I feel, but he said he still plans to leave because all he does is think about me every time he looks at her, and that it doesn't feel healthy to keep going on like that. That honestly makes me feel awful. I couldn't imagine being in her shoes. He says I shouldn't feel guilty because he was the one who didn't tell me about this relationship, and it's not my fault that he ended up falling for me. And now I'm stuck at a crossroads because I really don't know what to do. I really like this guy, and he says that he really is into me, but how do I not feel bad for his girlfriend? How do I overlook something like that? Do I tell her what's going on? I mean, I don't think it's my place to do it at this point, but I'm at a loss. What should I do? If this guy can cheat on his girlfriend with you, then you can bet that he can absolutely do the same to you. This is really disgusting behavior, and if I were you, I would not go with this guy. There's no way I would want someone like that in my life. Can you imagine being the other girl right now, where she has been led on for 2 years, only to suddenly be cheated on by you? She shared a lease with this guy, she lived with this guy, like this was not some casual situation, and yet he still cheated on her with you. If I was in your shoes, no matter how I feel about this guy, it would be time to cut him loose. I would not want to be with someone like that who knowingly would cheat on their significant other, because you can bet if he can do this with this lady, then he could absolutely flip the script and do this to you as well. My boyfriend is driving me nuts over my pregnancy, and I don't know what to do about this. My boyfriend and I found out that my birth control failed, and due to some medical complications, the steps we took to prevent me from getting pregnant failed completely. I told him immediately after finding out, and we've chosen to keep the pregnancy. We are both older and financially stable. However, it will be high risk because of the possibility of a premature birth. Since I told him of my pregnancy, he has been very weird. He is constantly calling to check in. He has been wanting to only eat healthy foods. I am a pretty healthy eater, but I don't see the harm in having a slice of pizza or some fries every now and then. Basically, if the food isn't crazy nutritional, he gets upset because apparently to him, I shouldn't eat junk food since I'm carrying our child. He has been to every appointment, and I'm pretty sure he bought all of the parenting books he could find. He will clearly be a very good father. He is normally a fantastic partner as well. I've never had any problem with him before. He treats me like a princess. When he found out I am high risk, he went even more nuts, not wanting me to do anything at all that could potentially make it any riskier. He literally weighed my handbag because he thought it was too heavy for me to be lifting it. I work from home with the occasional in-office meeting, and he absolutely does not want me to go because I could catch COVID. As a side note, I am up to date on my vaccinations, but I get the fear there. He had COVID last year and it was pretty bad. He also does not want me to leave the apartment without a mask. He has banned me from the stairs because I could fall and has banned me from wearing heels anymore, also due to the possible risk of tripping and falling. This makes sense, but the stairs are so much faster. However, I feel obliged with this because it makes him feel better. We both live in apartments, and our apartments are in the same building. His apartment is bigger, so he wants us to consolidate into his apartment. We had already talked about moving in together before this, but now I really feel like I need some space to tolerate this. I know our child is just as much his as mine, and we are already 20 weeks in, so about halfway there. I should probably just suck it up and try to put him at ease with all of this, but I've never been one to really let anyone control any aspect of my life, so I am a bit irrationally angry about how he is acting. I know he is just trying to make sure the pregnancy is as healthy as possible, and he is afraid because of the risk. I've told him his behavior is upsetting me, and he has sworn up and down the day I'm released from the hospital, he would buy me all the junk food, and I can do whatever I want. He seems genuinely concerned about my health and the pregnancy so far. However, this behavior is still driving me nuts. Am I being irrational right now? What should I do? I think you said it best. If this really is bothering you that much, and the way he's kind of hyper vigilant on what you're doing and eating and how you're walking and all this stuff, then I think you really should push back at this moment and say, hey, you gotta pump the brakes. You know your body, you know how it works, you know you can take the stairs, and I'm sure he means well, but it's kind of becoming obnoxious based on what you're describing. Even though he means well, if it's bothering you, then you need to say something. He needs to understand that there needs to be some kind of compromise, and when he's being completely controlling of the situation and not allowing you to do literally anything, it makes you feel very angry and very frustrated because you said it yourself, you don't like other people kind of controlling what you can and can't do. And it sounds like this guy's a really good guy. So I think if you just explain that to him and say, wait, no, really, I want to be able to do whatever I want to do, I think he might be able to come to some kind of compromise between the two of you where he can still be attentive, but not be obnoxiously attentive. After a year of jealousy, controlling issues, and anger mixed with drinking problems and red flags, I officially feel trapped in my relationship, and I genuinely don't know how to get out of it. Let me preface by saying I did not want to make this post, but as a 28-year-old male with parents and friends who have an emotional intelligence of children and avoid tough tough conversations like the plague, I really don't have anyone to go to for advice. I am hoping someone can talk some sense into me. I love my girlfriend, who's 23 years old, but I believe I may have ignored too many red flags when I first met her a year ago. When I first met her, she had problems with drinking and stuff going up her nose, if you know what I mean. And while I was recovering from severe depression and had just lost a good amount of weight trying to get my life back together after recovering from a previous heartbreaking breakup 2 years before, we ended up falling for each other hard. My girlfriend has always been very nurturing and there for me 100%, but she can get very scary when she drinks, or if any other female is in proximity of me. She becomes a whole other person, and maybe that's because she feels attached to me in some kind of way, because I got her out of doing illegal substances, and I feel like I got her on a good path. Her mom thanks me all the time for being a better influence in her life, and what I mean by she becomes a whole different person is that she will start to get very mean and very nasty to me after drinking, and she will make up lies, get very abusive, and sometimes hits me repeatedly. She will cause a public scene, and cops have gotten involved in the past. Later on, she will only apologize to me for the outburst when she is sober. I have forgiven her many times for these outbursts, but I don't think I'll ever forgive her for hitting me. I am a lot bigger than her. I'm 6'1" and I weigh 205 pounds, while she is 5'1" and 125 pounds. So she's not doing a lot of physical damage, but I think I feel more attacked emotionally when she does this. The other issue is the jealousy and the controlling nature. Whenever a female looks my way or talks to me in any type of matter, she loses it in seconds and makes me feel horrible. I cannot coexist with women in the world. I have never cheated or given her any reason to be this way with me. The other night, we were hanging out with her roommate that I also live with. We were at the pool drinking and she saw her roommate talking to me and looking at me. My girlfriend had an outburst and ended up saying a bunch of nasty things to me and called her family to come over, basically causing a big scene about it. I ended up Ubering my parents to get away from her and to give her time to sober up. My mom and sister were aware of what happened and apologized to me, but I didn't forgive her because I had to wake my parents up at 2 in the morning just to have a place to crash, and it was embarrassing. This has all been a constant theme that happens every few months. As another note, I've poured so much into this relationship and I really do care about her. We even have a successful business that we started that is our only source of income. I find myself losing interest in her and thinking about what it would be like to be with another woman, and this happens more and more after every outbreak and controlling issue that happens. I'm sorry if that sounds horrible, but it's the truth. She brings on a lot of stress in my life, but at the same time, I feel I can't escape her because she won't let me break up with her and will follow me and not give me space. I'm really not sure what to do in this situation. I feel like the writing's on the wall for this one. The fact that she's hitting you and freaking out over every small thing, in my opinion, is more than enough reason to leave her. And you know what? If she does try to follow you, that's when you get the police involved. Legitimately, the behavior you're describing is really problematic, and you should not accept that. It's not okay for her to freak out like that and to still have these types of violent, angry outbursts. So I would take a good hard look at this relationship, because from what you've described, this does not seem healthy or safe. I do not want my brother and my fiance's sister to be in my wedding. However, my in-laws are threatening to cancel the wedding if they are not invited, and at this point, I don't know what to do. This all sounds like a really badly planned drama. However, I am really unsure what to do at this point. My brother Harry introduced me to my fiance Derek when I was 21, and we have been inseparable since. It was weird, as I was not close to my brother due to being the affair baby. Our dad cheated on Harry's mother with mine. I also have two best friends, Nikki and Jess, who I've known since I was 5. Just before COVID hit, I found out that Harry was dating both of them, and so I exposed him. When I asked why he did that, he said he wanted to hurt me for what my mother did to his parents. My mother didn't know my dad was married or in a relationship, and he expected Derek to dump me after sleeping with me, and he's upset it didn't happen. My boyfriend also proposed to me around that time, and we are having our wedding next month. When I told him what my brother did, Derek immediately cut contact with Harry. Now, my in-laws are paying for the entire wedding because they are excited to see their son getting married. Because of this, they also invited a lot of family from his side, as well as business partners, and of course, I've invited my mom and my best friends to be my bridesmaids. My in-laws also said they want to cover the expense without us paying back, as long as we allow them to invite people. Otherwise, we will have to pay them back. However, when reading through the invitations, I have noticed that my brother's name is on them, and after doing some digging, I found out out he has proposed to my fiance's sister and she is pregnant with their child. According to my in-laws, they have been together for 4 years, all while one of them was in a long-distance relationship, meaning Harry also cheated on her with my friends. Because of this, my brother's mother is also going to be in the wedding alongside with my dad, as they were invited by my in-laws. I have told my in-laws that I don't want to see my brother or my fiance's sister in my wedding, but my in-laws are now insisting on canceling it and not paying for anything, meaning that we will have to change the venue on a very short notice or postpone it and potentially pay them the deposits back. That is if we don't invite them. I also do not want to see my brother's mother there, as she is just an awful person. However, we are not sure what to do here or what could be done. We cannot afford paying the deposits back due to the amount of people invited by my in-laws that they have booked at the venue. Plus, the venue is very large and very expensive, but having my brother, his mother, and my fiance's sister there will just be a lot of drama and the wedding will be ruined. Both myself and Derek have tried to tell my in-laws what Harry did, however, they won't believe it. And at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. I'm not gonna lie, your extended family sounds incredibly toxic. And I'm talking about the in-laws who are being absolutely unreasonable. They're basically saying, hey, we'll pay for your wedding if we can then run your wedding. And that's absolutely not fair. I think you need to draw a line in the sand and say this is how it's going to be, or you can just not pay for it and we'll figure something else out. They are basically holding you hostage with their money, and that's not fair. Like, it seems like they're trying to set up this weird drama situation at the expense of your wedding, and that's not fair at all. But from what you've described, this literally sounds like a nightmare. And regardless of what you choose to do, I hope it works out, and hopefully your in-laws come around and see where you're coming from. An entitled Karen tries to accuse my nephew of trying to steal my own car in my driveway, and I honestly could not be more upset. Here's what happened. First, a little bit of context beforehand. My sister has an adopted son by the name of Jason. He's one of the nicest kids I've ever met, and I am proud to call myself his uncle. While my sister and I are mixed, my dad being white, my nephew is dark-skinned and looks nothing like us, and sadly enough, this will be important later. Now, to mention my car, I own a 2020 Mazda MX-5 Miata. I managed to buy a brand new one thanks to being financially well off at the time. So this story takes place last summer. Jason was younger when this took place. My sister came to visit and brought Jason with her. At the time, Jason was outside on the porch talking to his friends and asked if it was cool if he could check out my car. I had no objection since I knew he'd be responsible and I could obviously trust him around it. Now, I wasn't here for this part since I was inside the house at the time, but my nephew tells me while he was checking it out, this kid comes around and starts gawking at the car. He goes up to Jason and asked him about the car, but Jason doesn't know anything about cars, so he said that he didn't really know anything about it and told him to come back later when I was outside and maybe I could tell him about the car. The kid says okay and just runs off. This is where I come into the story, since I heard what sounded like frantic pounding on my door. I opened it up and there stands the entitled Karen and her kid. She looks at me and says, "Sir, is this your car in the driveway?" I responded that yes, it is. She then says, "Well, I caught this young man trying to steal it." And after she says this, she points right at Jason. And at this point, I started to realize what was happening. I looked at her and said, "Oh, no, ma'am, I think you're misunderstanding. That's my nephew. He was just looking at my car." This Karen says in a slightly shocked but condescending tone, "This is your nephew?" I tell her that it is. And right around when she said this, my sister heard all the commotion and came up to see what was happening. My sister asked this lady, "What's going on here?" The entitled Karen then tried to imply that I was my sister's husband, but my sister kindly corrected her and said, "No, this is my little brother." She looked over her shoulder and saw Jason looking at the ground. She then asked this entitled Karen, "Did my son do something to upset you?" And at this point, I could practically see the Karen's eyeballs bulge out of her head. This Karen said, "He's your son? That is impossible. You two look nothing alike." My sister then said, "Well, my son is adopted." It's also good to note that my sister is not ashamed to admit that my nephew is adopted, and Jason is well aware that he is, but he simply doesn't care. They are all still family. This Karen then says something that absolutely blew my mind. She said, "Well, this one must have come from a family of thugs. I swear, they all have something wrong with them. He's setting a bad example for my son." As a side note, this entitled Karen's kid had no clue what was happening, and this is where my sister got incredibly angry. She then asked what she meant by that, and at this point, the entitled Karen doubled down, looked at Jason and said that he is a thug, stating that it's not her fault that they gave my sister a mistake of a child. And at this point, my sister and I were incredibly angry at this lady and began to berate her on how just because he's darker than us doesn't mean that he's not family, and about how she's a prime example of why people of color still have to watch their back, since apparently we can't do certain things because of how we look. The entitled Karen then began screaming back at us, threatening to call the cops since we were all nothing but a bunch of thugs apparently. And after she said that, I recommended that we not do that since I had a Ring doorbell, and I assured her the police would love to see this footage. After she found out that I had a Ring doorbell that was recording all of this, she ran off with her kid in tow. And honestly, I hope that entitled Karen never comes back. This entitled Karen is actually a giant piece of garbage. There's no question about it. Sometimes there might be some ambiguity there, but this lady fits the bill completely. You have to be a sick and twisted person to actually try and pull something like this on someone else's property. I mean, these types of comments are so unbelievably toxic and very, very uncalled for, and they are not based in any objective reality in the slightest. This lady was just straight up racist. There's no other way to put it. And people who act like that just make me sick, and they should be ashamed of themselves. The original poster said that they are going to contact the police and use the Ring footage as evidence, and I really hope something comes out of this, because the way this entitled Karen was acting is completely inappropriate, and no one should ever have to put up with that. I'm quitting my job, and I'm sad because I was friends with my boss, and now I simply don't know what to do. I put in my 2 weeks notice at work yesterday. This feels super dorky to write about, but I don't know who to talk to about this in real life without seeming dumb. About 5 years ago, I got a job as an assistant in the field I'm going to school for at a small family business. I was an assistant to one man, and we grew very close. Over time, my skills progressed, and I went to graduate school for the field I'm in. We had discussed it, and I'd be leaving the job to go to school. We both were bummed about it, as by that point, we'd grown to be good friends. He was almost like a second dad at that point, although at times, I have suspected he harbors less than professional feelings towards me. The plan, tentatively, was that I'd come back and work there after school. My boss called me about a month into school and asked me to come back part-time. I needed the extra cash and enjoyed working with him. Things kept on with me part-time for 2 years. In that time, we grew even closer. I feel super goofy to write this out about my boss, but between spending so much time together and having so much in common, he grew to be one of my closest friends, and he felt the same way towards me. Now, not all was rosy. My boss was a hard man to please. He was intensely particular about the way things were done, and sometimes his particularity seemed to follow no particular pattern. He grew frustrated with me, which I understand to an extent, but I was doing my best with what I had, and he had somewhat unreasonable expectations for me. I was expected to function on a level far beyond my training and experience, and when I fell short of that, my boss would get frustrated. He'd insult my intelligence and sometimes just be straight up mean. Over the past few months, the situation was deteriorating. He's grown mean and rude, and I'm not the only person to notice. He told me last month that he had changed his mind about hiring me as a professional after graduation, telling me that he wasn't sure I was cut out for the job, despite the fact that my coworkers, professors, and mentors disagree. He even cussed me out earlier this week. Yesterday, after getting belittled again, I decided I had had enough and put in my notice. It was so strange. When I met with him, I gave him my resignation letter, and he didn't react at all, just told me to put it on his desk and didn't even look at me. He then acted like nothing happened for the rest of the day. Frankly, he's in trouble without me, but I'm also scared I'm gonna go to work Monday and get yelled at. I know it's for the best, but I cannot help but mourn the loss of one of the most peculiar but fulfilling friendships I've ever had. What should I do? It sounds like your boss's true colors were slowly coming out. The honeymoon period of someone being your friend as well as your boss is definitely over, and what you were seeing is, in my opinion, exactly how your boss actually is. And frankly, based on his reaction, this is probably not the first time this has happened. You are probably one of many people that he has done this to, which is why he didn't react at all, because he probably knew this was coming. It is not okay in a professional setting for someone to talk down to you like that and for you to have to sit there and take it. So I don't blame you for a second for putting in your 2 weeks notice and saying enough is enough, because I would have done the same thing if I was in your shoes. And you know what? If anything, you can at least use that place as a good point of reference where you can show people in the future that yes, I did work in this field before I graduated. That way you can at least advance your career. And if I was in your shoes, I really wouldn't waste my time trying to get any kind of reference from him. I would personally just look to like a coworker or someone like that and see if they could give me a reference instead of him, because chances chances are he probably wouldn't give a good one since you're quitting. But hopefully you're able to move past this, because I think you're going to find better friends and bosses who won't change their attitude all of a sudden overnight and chew you out at the drop of a hat. That's not normal, and you do not deserve that treatment. My boyfriend proposed to me in the worst way possible. My boyfriend of 2 years really wants to get married. He has told me many times that I am the love of his life and that he wants to spend the rest of his life with me. He wants to marry me as soon as possible too. I want to spend the rest of my life with him, but I'm too young to be married right now. I've told him this many times. We agreed to get married in 2025 because of it, but my boyfriend still wants to propose right away. I've known he was gonna propose, and we have already picked out an engagement ring together. He's asked me how I wanted to be proposed to, and I told him in a romantic way, with just the two of us. I don't want to be proposed to in public, or just out of the blue at home while I'm studying or doing something like that. I know it's selfish to say, but I want my heart to pound with love during that moment. Well, since then, it seems like my boyfriend has ignored everything I said and wanted. He's asked me to marry him 5 times out of the blue at home, all while I'm doing chores or something like that. He doesn't go down on one knee or give me the ring. He just says suddenly, "Hey, want to get married?" I've always said over and over again, I'm too young to be married right now. But if we got engaged, that would be good, but only if you ask me in a romantic way. And this is where the title to this story comes in. Yesterday, me and my boyfriend went to a Ren fair with our closest friends. And earlier that week, I had a gut feeling that he was going to try and propose again. So earlier that week, I specifically told him over the phone, I don't want you to propose at the Ren fair. Please don't do this. That isn't how I want it to go down. I hate being the center of attention. Well, as you could guess it, as we were regrouping and getting ready to leave, my boyfriend comes up to me and pulls out the ring and gets down on one knee. And he then asks me, in public surrounded by people, if I want to get married. I freak out and say I'm too young and try to walk away. But my boyfriend would not take no for an answer. And he said back to me that we can still just be engaged. So I said fine, and he puts the ring on my finger. Then all the people around us started clapping, and I just wanted to disappear. And I still want to after thinking about this and replaying it in my head. Right away, I told him that this isn't how I wanted it to go down, and I told him to please try again, because I hate public proposals. Well, because of that, he took the ring back, and he's been spiraling emotionally ever since. He is devastated and mad that I rejected him, and I honestly don't know what to do next. He hasn't talked to me since the Ren fair, even though I have tried to talk to him about it, saying that I still love him and that he's not the problem, but every attempt to talk to him has just been ignored. What should I do next? I really don't know how to bring him out of this rut. Are my requests too much? What should I do? I don't think your requests are too much. You obviously want to try and get married to this guy, but you want him to do it in the way that you want it to happen. You specifically told him multiple times, I don't want a public proposal. I want this to be private, intimate, romantic. I want it to be just us. But he specifically did not listen. He took what you were saying and threw it out the window, which is completely unfair for you. And I think, if anything, this guy has revealed a very important part of himself. Not only can he not take no for an answer, but he also is absolutely going to ignore your wishes, despite the fact that you told him multiple times that you did not want something. I mean, based on the way you're describing it, I don't think you could have made it any more clear that you don't want a public engagement. It's weird for you, it's embarrassing, and you don't like it. So I would not feel bad about rejecting him and saying, hey, you want to try this again? Because this isn't what you wanted. And that's a big red flag in my opinion. So I would take a good hard look at this relationship in my opinion, because based on the way he's acting, this does not look promising. My boyfriend overslept and missed a planned date again. This is the 3rd time, and now I'm not sure what to do. My boyfriend of 8 months has a history of oversleeping. The first 2 times he overslept and missed 2 dates. The first was just with me, that we had planned 2 weeks in advance. And the second was a family hangout to meet my mom. Those 2 he was unemployed and was choosing to stay up all night, knowing that we have plans the next day. Each time it hurt, but each time I forgave him. We planned for him to come visit my house today. He is now working a night shift, and I made sure it was during his off day, not the day directly after his last day of work. That means that he's had a whole 24 hours beforehand to prepare himself for traveling to my house the next day. We live about 2 hours apart. My mom was looking forward to meeting him finally, and so is my grandma. She has Alzheimer's and probably has only 1 year left to live. She has met him once and likes him a lot. She was so excited to see him. He promised to sleep early. He promised to set alarms. But already going into this, I was scared. I was psyching myself for the possibility that he wouldn't visit. I wake up this morning from a text at 7 in the morning saying saying he's only going to bed now. He said he's gonna take a nap and try and wake up by 10:30. I already had a bad feeling, but said I would try to call him to wake him up. 10:30 passes by and nothing. I ended up calling him 15 times within the space of 2 hours, hoping even just one call would wake him up. My dad then starts asking where he is, and at this point I have to be honest, and I tell him that he's still at home. My dad shakes his head as he's just simply disappointed. My mom says it's fine, but I can tell she's also disappointed. She had cooked an extra special lunch for him. I had bought food from a trip just to give to him. It was 12, and he could only stay at our place until 5 p.m. to travel back, and now there's no chance he would have any time to come and visit. The hardest part about all of this was telling my grandma. She was looking for him the moment she saw him, so I had to tell her, while trying also not to cry, that he wasn't coming. The smile on her already aged, gaunt face faded. She looked so confused. She asked me again where he was, so I had to tell her again that he wasn't coming. She looked at my mom, and my mom repeated it again. It felt like a knife in my heart to see my grandma look so confused. Hours later, he messaged me saying sorry that he couldn't make it. I tell him honestly, but in a respectful way, that this is very upsetting to me. I told him that I felt that my family was disappointed, and I was feeling the same way. But his response was that he should be getting some leeway because if he had gone today, that would mean that he would have a hard time sleeping for work. And I feel like it was just not the right response. It felt like he was more concerned about how it would affect him more than how it affected me. I do understand where he's coming from, but it still stings. At first I could accept it, but now I'm just crying, and I just feel like I can't look at him the same way. It's like a broken promise, and my family means so much to me. My parents have never liked someone I've dated as much as they liked him. I'm scared this will affect the way that they see him. I feel so bad for my dad, as well as my mom and my grandma. I also feel so bad for me, and I also know it's hard on him too. I know the night shift isn't easy, but he promised, and this isn't the first time. How do I even proceed from here? I love him, but I can't handle another time when he doesn't show up. From now on, I don't know that I can ever trust that he'd come on time for anything. What should I do? It really does not seem like your boyfriend cares about you or your family. He had plenty of time to go to bed at a reasonable hour, but instead stayed up all night and only went to bed at 7? That's just unacceptable. If you have plans, you have to honor those plans, especially if you agreed to them beforehand. This isn't a surprise. This isn't spur of the moment. You plan this in advance. And right now, he's not coming off as a good boyfriend, to be honest. This is unacceptable behavior. He should have been there on time. He had plenty of time to get sleep and be ready to be there. So in all actuality, it does not seem like he made you or your family his priority. And that's a massive red flag, especially since he keeps doing this. So I would take a good hard look at this relationship and see if this is even something you want to entertain, because his negligence is only going to cause more friction later on. My husband always compares me to his friend's wife and calls her the ideal wife, and at this point I don't know what to do. My husband and I just celebrated our 8th anniversary, but we have been together since we were both juniors in college. We also have a 4-year-old daughter together. After we graduated college, we moved to San Francisco because he was a computer science major and wanted to work in big tech, while I was an anthropology and English graduate and did teach for America. While I understand that my job isn't as lucrative as his, all those years we lived together before marriage, I always prided myself on paying all my personal expenses out of my own account and taking care of all the household logistics to make up for only paying 1/4 of the rent of our apartment. However, the man my husband was back then was supportive about my goals and didn't ever make me feel like we had to keep score about who contributed what or who was entitled to what as a result. I have great admiration for my husband and recognize that he is an extremely talented software engineer who came up from nothing. However, the way he has been acting recently has definitely made me question if this is still the same man that I married. My husband was working for a very large corporation and getting good raises, but a friend of his asked him to become a technical founder for a business idea, and at the time I encouraged him. We moved to a pretty cramped apartment, went through our savings, and I defended him when people would say that all they really have is an idea. My husband and his partner were rejected by dozens upon dozens of investors. They had to let employees go because they couldn't afford salaries, and dealt with the fact that every business hopeful in town was basically willing to betray them to get ahead. At one point, his co-founder moved into our apartment because his wife was divorcing him, saying she was sick of him never having time for her. Finally, the business started taking off, and we had to put off marriage and kids because he said he wanted to be able to support a family. After that, he proposed, and I was happy to sign sign a prenup, especially since I assumed I would continue to work. Right before the birth of our daughter, however, his company decided to move their main headquarters to Tennessee, all of this being for business reasons. And so we moved out there. Right after the move, I gave birth, and that is when things really started to change. He was big in entrepreneurial circles there, and took up horseback riding and golfing. Through that, he started meeting new friends, who were successful men in their late 30s. They were outwardly conservative, but also lived the fast life. I do not like a lot of them because they would say really rude things about women sometimes, and generally were pretty dismissive of others' feelings when push comes to shove. Around that time, his co-founder, and probably the friend he spends the most time with, before and now, decided he was sick of having short-term relationships and decided to get married this year. His wife is 23 years old and he is 41, and 1 month after having their son, she was back in a bikini looking better than she did pre-baby. Let's just call her Anna. That's not her real name. Anna stopped working when she began dating his friend and basically posts about how much she admires her husband every day. She also fights a lot of his battles for him, basically arguing with others on his behalf when her husband feels slighted, and will blast these arguments onto social media. Whenever we socialize with them, I always catch him looking at them with a wistful look in his eyes, before looking at me with a lot of scorn and resentment. He has been coming home late for the past year, and these late night disappearing acts have only increased. He will stink of booze when he finally lays down next to me. His comparisons of me and his friend's wife have now started in earnest. He will criticize my career, saying that being basically a librarian is boring, and that I don't earn enough money. Plus, he asks why I cannot be like his friend's wife Anna, who just does secretarial work for free for her husband, and devotes her time to figuring out how he can make more money from his investments and such. He calls it my annoying work mom routine, even though I'm the one who does all the childcare and housework. He will complain that I cannot just drop everything at work to go on an impromptu 2-hour workout with him, because he usually can leave work whenever he wants. And whenever his friend wants to do something spontaneous, his wife Anna will drop everything to go with him. He has gone from an average build to working out all the time, and decided to get Botox and veneers that he didn't need. He encouraged me to get filters and Botox to stop my eyebrows from raising, saying that even if I get too much, it is better than wrinkles and will wear off eventually. He got mad at me when I said I didn't want that, saying Anna knows a good doctor, works out every day, and got a tummy tuck. Whenever we fight, he goes straight for the jugular and will point out that his single friends are having a better life than he does. He tried to hold our prenup over my head, saying that we weren't at the 10-year mark, so I'd barely get anything. He calls Anna the ideal wife and wants to hire a nanny and a maid so I could be as energetic as her. All throughout this, he claimed to be a completely faithful husband, which I doubted. I read every midlife crisis book available because I tried everything. I planned date nights, I went on 5 a.m. workouts with him, I used up all my vacation time to be there for him. But my efforts were reciprocated with criticism. He would say I could not keep up with him, that I looked tired all the time, and all these other terrible things. Finally, I followed him and I caught him going to a scandalous club, if you know what I mean. His only explanation was that Anna lets her husband go to these types of clubs and does all other sorts of scandalous things with him, and he then tried to turn this conversation into convincing me that cheating was okay and that I should participate when he wants it. I am so disgusted with him, and I consulted with a divorce lawyer. She looked over our prenup and says that in her experience, spouses sometimes use the 10-year clause to justify them nitpicking everything, basically making it so they can always ask the question of what have you done for me recently type of thing, and that it will probably get worse since we are approaching 10 years, and he may be thinking about whether or not to divorce me. She predicted that he would be a high conflict ex, but asked me if I thought he would try to divorce me before the 10 years are up. I honestly do not know, and I'm really afraid of what this would do to our daughter. I keep hoping this is a midlife crisis, and that he will apologize for it and just forget about it, but I am so miserable right now. We had such an ideal marriage, but now it's just falling apart. What should I do? This is a terrible situation for you and your daughter. You have a husband that has basically fallen off the deep end and decided to throw caution to the wind and basically ruin his marriage. I mean, what kind of husband would go to these scandalous clubs and then try and encourage his wife to start cheating, as well as basically saying, hey, you're not good enough? Like, this man is definitely a terrible person. I think talking to an attorney, as well as building up your assets that he can't get to, would be really important. But hopefully everything can work out for you, because nobody should be married to someone who makes them feel this way. My crazy entitled parents demand that I trade houses with them. them because they were jealous that mine was better. But when I said no, they retaliated by breaking into my house and stealing my belongings. Things were so bad that I had to get the police involved just to confront them for what they did. Here's what happened. I'm gonna start this off by saying that if you have a house and don't have cameras installed, get cameras. I have some now and I wish I had some sooner. I live in a pretty typical manufactured home in Arizona. My parents also live in one just a few streets over. Despite how close we are, I'm very limited contact because they are just plain bad people. They treated me okay as a kid, but things changed as soon as I was in my late teens. I was expected to do more and pay my way as soon as I finished high school. That was fair. I was an adult by then after all, but my parents wanted a lot more in rent than I would have to pay if I got my own apartment. I would have basically had next to nothing left from my monthly paycheck if I had given them exactly what they wanted, which was just ridiculous. So I refused to give them more than a fair amount, plus a share in the utilities. And I started buying my own food as well. My father openly said that this was not good enough, and my parents actually filed official paperwork to evict me when I refused to cater to their demands. I left home and got an apartment with my best friend. 5 years later, I bought my own house in a neighborhood not far from my parents. It's just a manufactured home on a small property, but it was so cheap that I couldn't turn it down, and my monthly mortgage isn't bad either. I even moved my best friend in to help me cover the bills. We were already used to living in a small space as it is, and the house gave us much more room. I may even let another friend move in to get some more rent money for the mortgage, because we've only got one room that's actually left unused right now since the house is a 3-bedroom. My parents, though, somehow didn't like my independence from them. I mean, did they want me to fail or something? I honestly don't know, but the incident that caused the very limited contact was when they demanded that I traded houses with them. Yes, you read that correctly. They actually wanted me to trade houses. Their manufactured home is smaller and older than mine and has one less bedroom, and their yard is smaller too. Not that either of us have any grass. It is Arizona after all. When they first saw my place, they looked incredibly upset. After a couple more visits, my father actually said that it wasn't fair that I was doing better than him, and that according to him, I was rubbing my nicer house in their faces. My house is literally just an old manufactured home in one of the hottest states in the US. Like seriously, what's there to brag about? But I guess having something even slightly better than what my parents had irked them. And as I've already said, they actually demanded we traded houses because of it. My friend who lives with me literally fell onto the couch laughing when they said that, and I couldn't help but join in. But my father said it was not funny. He then demanded that he should get what he wants. When I recovered my composure, I said he and my mother were not entitled to my house or anything I own for that matter. I then told them to get lost. After that, we barely spoke, and then the pandemic hit, which really didn't change my life much. I like the peace and quiet, and my friend knows to leave me alone most of the time. My father, however, got laid off, and he struggled to find another job. He ended up finding something local for half a year before getting a better paying job. He worked at a type of grocery store, and boy did I get a kick out of seeing him there when I was shopping for my groceries. But as much as I hate him, I'm not gonna call him a bad employee. He actually did fine. But during that time, he and my mother kept calling me and asking for money. And I know what you're thinking, don't lend them anything. But they didn't want loans, they wanted handouts. Why, you may be asking? Because they raised me and I apparently owed them. I said if they didn't want the cost of raising a kid, they shouldn't have had one. A few weeks ago, my mother called me begging for money because their dinosaur of a window AC unit finally stopped working. I told them I was not giving them anything, and they were too cheap to replace the old AC unit for a long time. So I wasn't gonna buy them a new one. I refused. My mother then started complaining about how I had 2 in my house and that I could at least give them 1. And long story short, I basically said, no, I'm not giving it to you, and you can go buy another one when you save money on the beer and cigarettes you keep buying. I thought that was the end of it, but no, it gets much worse. A few days later, I came home from work to find my house had been broken into. My front door locks were drilled out, and both my window AC units were gone. Nothing else was stolen, but they went out of their way to make a huge mess for some stupid reason, probably to make it look like a typical robbery or something like that. But after seeing what was missing, I knew it had to have been my parents, and so I did the only thing I could think of, and I called the police. I told the police that I heavily suspected my parents of the theft because they acted entitled to my stuff, even though I'm a fully grown man that doesn't live with them. I went with the police to my parents' house, and sure enough, they had both my AC units going in their windows. When confronting my parents, they obviously denied the theft. They claimed they already owned the AC units, but thankfully, statements from the neighbors said otherwise. But my parents still denied the theft. I'd bought both AC units used online years ago, which means I had no receipts for them, so I figured my only option was to look for witnesses in my own neighborhood. And as luck would have it, a neighbor across the street has security cameras, and the edge of one of them caught just enough to see my parents showing up in my father's truck. My father could be seen walking with a cordless power drill in hand, and a few minutes later, they came back to the truck with my AC units. Then they went back to ransack my place, I guess. With this evidence in hand, the police had cause to arrest my parents. At first, both of them acted like they'd done nothing wrong, but I convinced the police to let me do the talking. I said they could either return the AC units to my home and clean up the mess that they made, or I would let the police arrest them both right there. They'd already stolen to me, they lied to the police, they trespassed and vandalized my house, they broke my front door locks, and there was video evidence of what they'd done. If I pressed charges, they were both going to jail for sure. My parents looked deflated, then asked for a moment to talk with each other in their bedroom. I heard a lot of shouting from the both of them, and I could hear my mother yelling that my father was an idiot, which he is, by the way, and he was trying to blame me in turn. After about 5 minutes of that, they came back out looking even more deflated and said they'll return the AC units and stop bothering me for money if I didn't press charges. I said they were going to clean up the mess in my house and buy new locks for my front door as well, and then I wanted written apologies from both of them on top of that. They begrudgingly agreed and even got a police escort back to my house. My father was forced to put the AC units back in my windows and then left my mother to clean up the huge mess they made while he went out to buy some replacement locks for my front door. He was gone about an hour and came back with a new stainless steel lock set to replace the knob and deadbolt. Then he had to help my mother finish cleaning. During this time, I let the two cops just sit and watch them while drinking soda. After everything was cleaned up, I gave my parents each a piece of paper and a pencil, then told them to write out apologies to me for what they'd done. My father looked especially upset and said I was treating him like a child. I said he was acting like one and never stopped treating me like a child either. This was just me holding him accountable, which of course he doesn't like. And I could have sent him to jail, but I felt like this was better for teaching him a lesson. He then kind of snorted and started writing. My mother wrote out a good apology, but my father's was pretty halfway done and passive aggressive, but I didn't care. It seemed to destroy him a little bit inside to have to do it, and when he was done, he left without speaking to me. My mother said she was sorry and that she'd leave me alone, then followed after him. The two cops said they thought the whole thing was hilarious and then thanked me for giving them an excuse to take a break while on the job before leaving. Not long after, I shelled out to get some cameras for the exterior of my house, so if someone tries to break in again, I'll get it on video this time. I only have 2 cameras, but added a couple more fake ones that look real enough just to scare people off. Thankfully, I haven't heard a peep from my parents, but their next door neighbor told me that they bought a new AC unit. I guess they had money for one after all. Makes me wonder how under the influence they truly were when they thought it was a good idea to steal from me. Maybe having lean pockets for a while would teach them, but then again, that's asking for quite a bit. The original poster is absolutely amazing. They handled this perfectly and definitely taught their parents a lesson. These entitled parents actually broke into his house, you know, the house that they were jealous of, drilled a hole through the locks, and stole 2 AC units as well as trashed the place. The criminal nature of that is just absolutely disgusting, but it looks like revenge really did come the original poster's way, as he taught his parents a lesson that no, you can't break into my house and you cannot get what you want. Otherwise, there's going to be consequences. I am upset that my boyfriend of 2.5 years never cooks, and I honestly don't know what to do. For background, my boyfriend and I just moved in together a little over a month ago, even though we've been together for the past 2.5 years. Since I was done with university a year early, I had lived on my own for the past year. He would come over every weekend and I would do the cooking. I had attempted to get him involved with baking, as well as cooking or grocery shopping, and he expressed every time how much he absolutely dreaded them. His attitude during grocery shopping was always negative. He was always bored or exhausted. There had been times where he would rage quit through the cooking process and would walk off just to watch a YouTube video instead of helping me finish the cooking. He has never wanted nor tried to learn how to cook anything other than chicken, rice, and steamed vegetables. I had to be the one to teach him many cooking-related tasks, such as the different types of ways to cook eggs, simple recipes, how to make a Caesar salad, or anything like that. When he was living at home, his parents did let him fend for himself sometimes, but he always ended up cooking easy-to-go meals like pasta with sauce or frozen pizza. Because of this, we talked about splitting the cooking responsibilities 50-50 when we decided to move in together. He talked about how he would finally have the freedom and the drive to learn how to cook, and for the most part, I believed him. Fast forward to now. now, and we have started doing online pickup to save time as he hates grocery shopping just about as much as he hates cooking. The kitchen we have is twice the size of my old apartment, so there is a lot of room for creativity, which is what I have been doing. In fact, I have been the one to orchestrate grocery shopping and 85% of the cooking since we moved in together. The other night, I finally let it out and was extremely upset. We discussed last week that this specific week would be 100% his cooking week, and I would do all the dishes. He had all of the recipes 3 days in advance because I sent them to him. Both recipes are chicken recipes that he decided on. However, come the first night, the entire situation fell flat, and he was just one big ball of negativity. For 1.5 hours of making chicken parmesan, he just kept cursing and repeatedly saying how much he hated this on repeat. I ended up serving myself at 8 o'clock at night and making my own salad, which by the way only took about 3 steps. This was because after I pulled the chicken out of the oven, he rage quit and took a 20-minute shower while the chicken was getting cold. After we finished eating, we had an argument. I explained that I was upset because I had been cooking for both of us for the past 3 weeks and I couldn't go one night without having to step in to help. As a side note, this was also after I had washed all the dishes. He told me that I couldn't claim the last 3 weeks because a lot of the food that I heated up for dinner was frozen or thawing out, even though I explained to him that it was easy because I spent hours on the weekend prior making the food. He said heating up a frozen pizza was the equivalent of heating up pulled pork. He explained to me that he would be fine cooking frozen pizzas or ramen every time he needed to cook, but I tried to tell him that that isn't healthy at all. I told him that I understand that as an easy meal every now and then, but I shouldn't be the one to cook all the big balance meals while he got the pizzas and ramen. I'm really stumped on what to do. He told me multiple times how much he despises cooking, and I have told him multiple times how unhappy I am feeding the both of us all the time. He now wants to learn how to make my slow cooker pulled pork and chili. Is this a first step in the right direction? Or is this just an easy way out? Because maybe pulled pork and chili would feed 2 people for about 9 days. But what about the other days of the month? Should I just let him start slow like this, even though I'll still be taking care of most of the complex meals for most of the month? I need suggestions because it's honestly mentally and physically exhausting, and I honestly don't know what to do. I mean, a slow cooker really is a step in the right direction because those things are super easy. You quite literally just throw it in and it pretty much does the job for you. So if anything, maybe get him a bunch of recipes that he might like and teach him how to use the slow cooker as a way for him to start cooking. At the end of the day though, I don't think you can make him like cooking. It sounds like he really just likes the cheap, easy frozen stuff that you can just heat up and eat really quick, which for some people that's probably enough. But this is a genuine concern of yours, and it's really disappointing to see that he's not taking this seriously. So hopefully having a slow cooker could put him in the right direction. And with enough recipes, maybe you can diversify this enough where it's not only something that can be filling and good, but also something that's healthy. Because otherwise, eating pizza and ramen every single night is going to get old really fast and probably cause some serious health problems later down the line. My boyfriend takes his stress out on me, and I'm not sure how to deal with this or what to do. We have been struggling recently after over 5 years of being together. Our conversations can sometimes be tense and borderline argumentative. I often feel like I am treading on eggshells, trying to avoid a bad reaction from him. Very often, he makes fun of what I say, repeating back what I said in a whining baby voice. We had a big talk recently about some money issues that he has caused, resulting in problems of us being able to buy a house together. He hid all of these financial issues from me, and he did this for about a year, and this greatly upsets me. I also mentioned these other behaviors, letting him know that it makes me feel like he doesn't even like me. I said that I cannot live with this for the rest of my life if this is how he's going to act. He said that the whining imitations of me was to try and let me know what I sounded like, saying that he doesn't like it when I whine. He also said he was upset with me because I hardly initiate with him, which makes him feel unwanted. I agree that I could do better in that department, but I also feel that it is hard to initiate with someone who acts like they don't like you. We have now come to a money agreement, but he said that his behavioral issues are due to stress and that he'll try and improve them. He doesn't hate me, and he feels awful for the way he talks to me. One big problem is that he lost his dad very unexpectedly and traumatically earlier this year. This has left him with a great deal of stress, as he has no others in his family that can take control of the estate issues. While I sympathize with his situation, I explained to him that stress was no excuse to be disrespectful to each other. I also lost my father almost 2 years ago now, and I am still very much grieving terribly. He was there for me then and was a great support, and I want to continue to do the same for him now. But I also said that we are going to encounter many stressful situations in our lives together, and we need to be on each other's side when this happens. The next few weeks after this big talk went pretty well. I felt much happier, and I felt as if he was happier too. But now it's starting to slip. This past weekend, all my fears were reawakened. I felt as if he was relentlessly imitating me in a whining voice, even though I have tried my best not to do anything that will cause him to do this. Every conversation we had felt really tense. I did not feel like being physical with him all weekend because of this. I now feel very worried about moving in with him, as well as even buying a house together when I feel this way. I feel like he's the only one that is truly there for me in my life, and without his support, I feel very alone in the world. I love him very much, and I am scared I am losing him. I don't know whether to call out his behaviors or to just wait it out until things settle down, or should I maybe make a better effort on my side to comfort him and to initiate with him. He's hurting a lot, and perhaps that is what I should focus on. I am just so sick of putting up with all these behaviors for the past 4 months. What should I do? I would be very annoyed with this type of behavior as well. And you're right, I understand that he's grieving, but the way he's acting is inappropriate. And honestly, I would not move in with him until this is addressed. It also sounds like a lot of his behavior is incredibly abusive. You walk on eggshells and you try to avoid conversations, all to avoid the negative reaction that you know you're going to get out of him. That's really not healthy in my opinion. And he hid the fact that he was messing around with your finances and ruining your chances at buying a house, which probably is the universe saying, hey, whoa, wait a second, you do not want to move in with this guy just yet. From my perspective, he sounds like a basket case, and these behavioral issues are definitely something that he needs to work out. Otherwise, I can see this relationship falling apart, and from the sounds of it, it's definitely going to be his fault. My sister is giving me the silent treatment, and I don't know what to do about this or how to handle it. So my sister is giving me wild silent treatment right now. Her husband invited my family over for a barbecue last weekend, and she straight up avoided me and ignored me and my family the entire time. Her husband, her mother-in-law, and her kids and I all had positive interactions, but I have no idea what's going on. I used to live with her, and before I had my daughter, we were very close. Like, I saw her twice a week, but now she can't even greet me. She can't even look me in the eye or even have a conversation. Everything's just become so weird all of a sudden. After the party, I texted her about it and reflected back, and I realized she has been avoiding my calls and canceling plans for a couple of months now. We live 20 minutes apart, but I just kind of assumed that she was probably busy or something along those lines. But that's when I realized, no, that's not the case. The problem is me. She wants to avoid me. The thing about it that's the most infuriating is her husband has no idea. My parents also have no idea this is going on. Our mutual friends are even left in the dark on how things are happening. She talks to them about me like everything is fine. On group texts, she's always first to respond and tells people she will call them later. Like I said, I texted last week asking if there's a reason she's avoiding me and asking to connect and catch up in some way. But of course, I got no response from her. But our stepmom messages today on our group text, and my sister has a really sweet message for her and says that she will chat with her later. It feels like she is rubbing it in my face that she is doing just fine, basically verifying that yeah, she's giving me the silent treatment. It's pretty petty and it's making me resent her like crazy, but I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to call my stepmom and ask for advice, just so I don't feel so alone in this. My sister has also done this to our stepmom and my biological mom. She gets super hot and cold while putting on this I'm doing amazing front, and I feel annoyed she is getting away with it this time at my expense. Like, I'm giving her space, but do I straight up call her out and say to her, look, I know you are straight up giving me the silent treatment. Should I involve other people and ask them if they know why she's ignoring me? I don't really know what to do or what I'm looking for. It's just all very frustrating and I'm kind of at a loss. I hate it when people give me the silent treatment. Nothing drives me more crazy than someone doing that. And it sounds like your sister does this anytime she doesn't get her way. She did this to your biological mom. She did this to your stepmom. This is her way of getting back at someone else. And it's just toxic. It's so uncalled for. And if anything, it's a reflection of how terrible she's acting and her own insecurities. But I do think there is a solid way of fighting the silent treatment, and that is to just completely ignore any of these petty attempts. Typically for silent treatment, in my opinion, it's used to get you to beg her to talk to you, just so she can ignore you as punishment. That's really what she's looking for in this situation, in my opinion. And if you don't give it to her, then guess what? That's her problem. If you just go about your life as if nothing's changed, that basically will then leave the ball in her court and basically place all the blame on her. So in my opinion, I don't think you should reach back out. I think you've already tried to reach out once. That was like, what, a week ago? And she has made the choice to ignore you, despite the fact that she is not busy and she's responding to group text messages. So I would not entertain begging for her attention, and I would instead just move on and go about your life like normal, because she's just being toxic and she just wants attention, and you don't have to participate in this type of toxic game. My crazy entitled father tries to rent out my apartment that he does not own to 3 random strangers. Things got so bad that they even showed up to my apartment demanding my keys because they were moving in. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and my parents are so crazy to the point where me, as well as a majority of my family, have cut them off. For me personally, I've cut off my dad completely, and my mom calls on occasion. My mom is also constantly trying to overstep her boundaries, such as inviting him to family events that he's specifically not invited to, and she purposefully does these things knowing they'll cause an argument, and she gets joy out of it. They're that kind of people. So needless to say, any sane person could agree that they would not want this kind of problem in their life. My dad is delusional and narcissistic, and this is so bad that he thinks he's famous and claims that everybody runs up to him for pictures, telling him how famous he is, while also spouting off that somebody's gonna make a movie about him. And obviously, as I'm sure you're able to guess, he is delusional and all of this is a lie, because no one has ever seen this and it's kind of a running joke. People will actively laugh at him, but in his mind, he thinks that they're laughing with him and not at him. He has lost all of his friends due to his poor behavior, such as arguments, belittling, and non-stop phone calls. So hopefully you understand and have a better picture of who it is that I have to deal with probably for the rest of my life. But back to the story, I have my own apartment, and I chose not to give my address to them because we aren't on speaking terms, and he made some threatening remarks towards me because I wouldn't give him my personal information. Also, he could try and take out loans in my name. Like, that's an obvious no. Also, it's important to note that I did not grow up with him, so while he is technically my dad, I also barely know him. So this is where things get really crazy, because he apparently told people that he has an apartment, and the apartment he's referring to is mine, and he likes to brag, stating that he lets his daughter live in this apartment. He likes to pretend that he's a big shot, so he then told some people who needed a place to live that they could stay at his spare apartment. So he got my address from a family member just so he could further spread this lie. I assume my mom gave out the address due to the fact that no one I know speaks to him. Well, one day I get a call from my apartment building manager saying that there's some people at the gate claiming that they're here to move into my unit, and they asked for clarification if this was correct. And at this point, I'm just so confused. And that's when the pieces started coming together, as I realized that my dad had sent these people to try and live in my place, even though this is not his apartment to give out for people to live in. This is my own private residence. I own this place. I pay the bills. This place is literally mine. At the time, I didn't even know he had my address. So I go out to meet these people who are looking to move into my place, and there was a lot of confusion across the board. There were 3 people, 3 random sketchy older looking men, standing there waiting to move in. As a side note, I would at most let a friend stay a few nights if needed, but not 3 strange random men. There's literally not enough room, and that's just not gonna happen. As I tried to figure out what's going on, my building manager stayed because she wanted to know what's going on as well, and wanted to help sort it out. The 3 men then proceed to tell me that they are moving into their place. They then asked me for the keys to the apartment, as they claimed that my dad told them that I was getting kicked out because apparently I was just freeloading in this apartment. I asked to see what the address was because I thought maybe they had the wrong address, but nope, it was mine. And at this point, I was just super upset. So I tried to give him a call to sort it all out, but of course, he's not answering at the moment. So I have to explain to them that I don't know how he got my address, but I haven't spoken to this man in about a year. And I also explained that I don't know what he told them, but I'm not freeloading. This literally is my place, and that unfortunately they cannot move in. They then tried to get me to call him again, but I said no, calling won't change anything, and this honestly is not my problem, so I can't help you. I then hear one guy on the phone talking to my dad, and I can hear him telling them that I'm apparently lying, and he was basically coaching them on what to say, stating that I should show them the lease. And at this point, we're all kind of at a loss for words. Luckily, my building manager stepped in, and she told the men that they all must have the wrong place. She explained that I'm the only one on the lease, and that they will all have to leave and sort it out. I can say that despite them looking sketchy initially, they were all overall very calm about the situation, because they got tricked by my dad, and they honestly thought they were moving into an apartment for free. So I apologized to these men and said that my dad is a liar, and I'm so sorry that he pulled you into his delusion. And to this day, I honestly don't know what my dad thought would happen, but like Like I said, he's delusional. He probably assumed all he was saying was true. It's all so crazy that I can't even attempt to understand. And honestly, there is no use. After the incident and once the men left, I told my manager thank you, and that if anyone ever comes when I'm not home, please give me a call or call the police. Because the last thing I need is for someone to try and move into my apartment while I'm still living there. That is some seriously sketchy stuff. Your dad quite literally was trying to uproot your life, all because of some weird delusion that he has. And worst of all, he dragged 3 strangers into the situation, and they got sucked up into his mess. So hopefully this never happens again, and hopefully you're able to avoid your crazy dad, because this guy is delusional, and he clearly does not have any good intentions towards you in the slightest. I got ghosted by the guy I fell in love with twice, and now I don't know what to do. I matched with a guy in June of this year. After 2 months of talking, feelings grew intensely between the both of us. For a while, it did feel like his feelings were rushed. He knew I was the one 2 weeks into talking. He even had me meet his mother over the phone by the first month. It was intense and really fast. I'm the type that slowly falls in love, so I was very hesitant and expressed my fears of starting something new because I have a history of being hurt as well as being stuck in toxic relationships. Now, we never met. We first planned on seeing each other late July, but he had transportation issues. He had told me he'd make it up to me by staying with me for a weekend before visiting his family. He planned on asking me to be his girlfriend during this stay. I should add also that he's in the Air Force, so he had not seen them in a year. A week before this, communication decreased. For 4 days, I hardly heard from him. This is coming from a guy who would make sure to always talk to me every day. We would have nightly FaceTime calls and everything, so naturally I got anxious. We talked a couple days before he was going to visit, and after I told him that I could not depend on him, he got triggered. I was going through some health issues, so not hearing him during that time was really painful for me. He told me he was apparently done with this, and after an hour of crying on the phone, I asked him if he was going to still see me. He said yes, I promised to. So I decided to give him space until then. The day came for him to come and see me, and I heard nothing. He ghosted me for 17 days. At that point, I was making my way through the heartbreak and trying to move on. Then he texted me this long message. In summary, he said he was insecure and ashamed of himself, telling me that I was perfect and that he couldn't give me the love that I deserved because he didn't love himself. He said that he thought about me the whole time and that he knew he messed up. He then asked me to forgive him but not to forget. I asked him to have a phone call with me because I didn't want to text back and forth. We had a 2-hour phone call where I interrogated him and he answered all my questions. I told him he disrespected me and I didn't deserve that treatment. I said I couldn't be with him and that I had no trust in him now. He said he understood and that he felt guilty, but asked me to still be in his life because he wants to prioritize the people he cares about, and that apparently I'm one of them. I agreed to it, but said he needed to work on building my trust back. And after that call, I felt content. A few days went by and I reached out and I still heard nothing. It's been a week and I called him and it went straight to voicemail. So I'm assuming he's ghosting me again. I feel stupid for thinking that he'd be empathetic enough to know not to make the same mistake again. I feel heartbroken all over again. Why did he come back and express all these things just to ghost me again? How do I move on from this situation fully? I feel like his ghosting pattern allows him to keep this relationship open-ended, and I just want him to let me go. What should I do? I think you need to do exactly what you're implying. You need to let this guy go and move on with your life. He's clearly not serious about this relationship, and he definitely does not prioritize you or your time. So if I were you, I would just move on. This is just not worth the energy or the anxiety to deal with someone like this. It could be as simple as you sending him a text message and saying, "This situation isn't working for me and I wish you the best of luck." Then you just straight up block him and move on. He clearly does not care about you. And honestly, you can do so much better than somebody who's just gonna ghost you every single time you make up and try and improve the relationship. My boyfriend has no job or money, and he wants me to move out with him. And I'm honestly not sure how to go about this situation. At first, I thought it would be fun. Moving away from home is something that is terrifying, and I have always looked forward to doing. For some background, my boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When the relationship started, I didn't even care about picking a beginning date and decided I didn't want to change him or try to fix him, as I had fallen into that trap with my ex previously. We'd been friends since high school, and I had loved him unconditionally for ages before we got together. He cares about me and he calls me his soulmate. I don't actually believe in soulmates, but when we are together, he makes it all seem like everything is okay and perfect. He was raised by parents with narcissistic narcissistic tendencies. He's the youngest of 6, and his parents are ready to retire. My boyfriend, however, is not an adult yet. He seems to be left behind by them. They want to move away by 2023, and my boyfriend doesn't want to go with them, mainly because he doesn't want to be living far from me, and because they bring out the worst in him. My boyfriend has anger management issues. Almost all of his angry fits are because of fights with his parents. That being said, I don't know how on earth he's going to move out of his house when his life is currently the way it is. He would have to say goodbye to living with his dogs, and he has no money and no drive to get a job. For example, he couldn't afford 1 scoop of ice cream because he only had $4, and he would have had to use it on the ice cream if he could, so I just paid for both of us. He has no savings, and he gets $150 as pocket money from his parents for vacuuming the house. Unfortunately, $140 of those dollars goes towards his addiction towards the herb, if you know what I mean. He cannot function without it and starts withdrawing in under 2 hours if he doesn't have it. By the way, it's illegal in my country. This is the main reason I am hesitant to move out with him. I fear that he expects me to pay for almost everything. Today, I asked him if he could get a job before our 1-year anniversary. Also, we could potentially move out together by 2023 like he wants. I guess I assumed that over the course of the year, he would change his ways and get a job on his terms, despite all of the evidence to the contrary. After I suggested this, he got so mad at me. He told me that he had been working for 8 hours straight, editing his no-budget movie, and I was making him feel like garbage about himself. At this point, I honestly don't know what it will take to get him on his feet. I am also helping with the production of the movie, and I myself have put more money into it than he has. His only weekly commitments are filming and picking up his herb. He is also a high school and university dropout, so it's not like he doesn't have all the time in the world to get things together. His addiction basically confines him to his messy bedroom. Over the course of COVID, he developed the addiction and severe social anxiety, and now he's scared to get a job because he withdraws in 2 hours, limiting how long his shifts can go for. His parents are the reason he smokes so much, and I was hoping if he moves away from them, his anger issues and addiction could subside. But my hopes are not high. I've tried so many times to help him quit, but I'm honestly so sick of trying to fix my partners. I am honestly the best thing that could have happened to him, but I just can't be a sugar mama. He says he will get a job after the film is finished. In the meantime, he'll be watching YouTube videos and playing on his PS4 while I go to university, teach, and work 2 jobs just to make ends meet while living at home. I don't want to resent him. I love him, and I don't want to break up. We are working on a film together. I just don't want to be taken advantage of. But I'm starting to get the vibe that he really is doing just that. What should I do? I honestly would not move in with this guy if I were you. His lack of work ethic and the fact that he has no desire to move forward with his life and make any kind of diligent, dedicated effort to better himself is more than enough reason for you to avoid this overgrown man-child. Because honestly, that's exactly what he is. And I'm not trying to be rude here. He has every opportunity to get a job and still work on his film. Yes, it is possible to do both. And there is no way you can convince me that he's spending all day editing his movie. That is just not what's happening. So honestly, I think it's time to have a very serious conversation with him. Because I think you know in your heart of hearts, this guy is using you for your money. And unless he gets his act together, I just don't see him changing anytime soon. My girlfriend is being very careless with her words and actions towards me, and I don't know what to do. My girlfriend and I have been together for almost 2 years now, and we actually took a break this year due to this issue that I'm going to talk about. She's promised to work on it, but tonight another incident happened, and I just feel crushed. Throughout our entire relationship, my girlfriend has just been thoughtless when it comes to me. I feel that is such harsh wording, but I'm not sure what else to say. She even admits to it. She says she doesn't think about her actions until I tell her that it's hurtful, and then it becomes glaringly obvious to her. It's always after the fact that she realizes this. It started at around the 4-month mark. She always insisted that she has no guy friends, which wouldn't really matter to me in the first place at all. Then one day, she was out with a friend, and eventually I realized she was actually alone hanging out with a guy. They were just friends from university, but she hid this whole thing from me on purpose, like lied about having him as a friend and being with him alone. Then another day, she started telling me in very, very fine detail about some intimate situations she's had with previous guys before me, which really made me uncomfortable. During our break this May, she re-downloaded Tinder and met a guy on it, and while we were reconnecting and figuring things out again, she would go over to his house alone and hang out. Again, I had no idea this was happening. That is until I saw him commenting on her socials. And bear in mind, this was when we were just getting into talking talking and trusting again. Tonight, she made a comment about a huge insecurity of mine and said when guys have this certain feature that I do not have, it makes her feel incredibly attracted to them. And I could not believe that she actually just described my biggest insecurity straight to my face. I absolutely love this girl, and she can be pretty thoughtful at times, but this is only a handful of situations that have happened. Most of the time, it's great, but I'm actually crippled with insecurity for fear of her hiding something else again and just not thinking about it until I point it out after the fact. She even admits that she fails to consider my feelings when doing this stuff, but she genuinely doesn't understand why, and honestly, neither do I. I love her so much, but I don't know what to do. I just don't understand why it's so hard for her to think about me before she does this stuff. What should I do? This is really inappropriate behavior from your girlfriend. She is not at all considering your feelings and completely being neglectful towards your needs. She straight up lied to you about having a guy friend while hanging out with him in private all while you're together. And personally, if I was in your shoes, I would be very suspicious of the guy she's had in the past. She's obviously very comfortable with lying about meeting up with him after the fact, so it kind of makes me question what else she's lied to you about. I mean, is she even serious about your relationship together? Because it seems like, from my perspective at least, she's taking a very immature approach to all of this, and that is simply not fair for you. So hopefully all of this gets worked out, because if she continues to lie and not think about you when this stuff goes down, then it's only going to damage your relationship with her, and it's only going to cause these problems to become even worse. My roommate's immature and rude behavior is starting to cause a rift in our relationship, and I don't know what to do. My roommate and I met freshman year of college and have lived together for the past 2 years. For the sake of this story, I'll call her Haley. That's not her real name. She has always done little things that bother me, like being extremely messy and not paying me back. But the situation has grown to be so much more than that. As of the past 6 months or so, she has been just plain mean, for the lack of a better term. Whenever I say that I like something, she tries to tell me that I am wrong for liking it, and then gives me a bunch of reasons why. She will also comment her negative opinion on looks or items of a mutual friends, or even strangers out of nowhere. Her comments are almost never positive. If it's not something that she owns or has been accustomed to in her life, it is less than or wrong. This oftentimes hurts my feelings and others. It even extends to the food that I eat. If I just happen to be eating something that she doesn't like, she will tell me that it's gross or looks disgusting to her. Another thing that Haley continues to do is not pay people back, including me and our friends. It especially irritates me because she is given a large allowance from her parents every month, yet the money that me and our friends have is money that we have worked for and earned ourselves, thus making it more valuable to us since we don't have an automatic cash influx without hard time and effort. Haley still owes me so much money for things I have bought her throughout the years and has not paid it back regardless of how many times I have asked nicely. The last major things that she does is complain. Along with the negative opinions, all I hear whenever I'm around her is why things are seemingly so awful for her. She constantly complains about not having things, or that the current situation just simply isn't good. For example, she attended a beach trip with our friends and complained that the sand was too flat, as well as the fact that the king-size bed she slept on hurt her back. She also said that, of course, none of the food was to her liking. In comparison, she would also brag about her beach house and how it's so much better than the one we were staying at. It made me so upset because it made me feel like I couldn't ever fix a situation to ever make her feel content and happy. To top this all off, she's also very selfish. She refuses to help someone out unless there's a benefit for her. Overall, she is very sensitive and has cried and ran away from situations if I have brought this up in any way, shape, or form. Even just simply asking her to pick up her mess or her trash in the common living area will cause some kind of meltdown and cause her to freak out and run away. How do I bring up these topics to her in the kindest manner possible? It has really been exhausting me mentally and emotionally, and has come to a point where it's hard at all just to see her as a good person. Keep in mind, I am one of her only good friends, whereas I have many more friends that I can rely on. What should I do? Your roommate sounds incredibly entitled and very spoiled. Mommy and daddy just gives her an allowance, and yet she still asks for money. In my opinion, I would never loan her money ever again. She is super selfish, she does not care about other people, and she has a very negative attitude about everything. I know you feel obligated to try and stay her friend, but maybe there's a reason why she has no friends. And I can bet you it's because of the way she treats other people. I'm surprised you've put up with this for as long as you have, because if I was in your shoes, I would have found another place to to live or asked her to move out. And she only runs away and cries because she doesn't get what she wants and she's trying to manipulate you. Like she is literally using that as some kind of manipulation tactic to try and get what she wants. But if I were you, I would not budge on this. She needs to clean up after herself. She needs to pay you back for the stuff that you've given her. And she needs to make the living environment more positive and approachable. Otherwise, this is simply not going to work. I think this can be a case where you definitely think about yourself first and say, hey, you need to conform or something's gonna change. And if that drives a wedge between the two of you and your friendship, then honestly, that's probably a good thing. Because real friends don't act like this. And you honestly don't need this kind of energy in your life. My entitled aunt steals my computer and gives it to her kid, claiming that they were only borrowing it for a little bit. But I was so angry that I simply was not going to take that sitting down. So I called the cops and I pressed charges. Here's what happened. My entitled cousin has never been into computers and doesn't really have any hobbies, but he will always try to one-up everybody as well as my family. And to be honest, we're all getting sick of it. For instance, a few years ago, I had saved up for almost 2 years every penny and dime I had to buy a computer, which at the time was really good. I had not told anyone about it besides some friends from school, but somehow my cousin found out, and just a few days later, he had bought an Xbox One and had told the entire family, which of course I don't have a problem with. But then a few hours later, after he bought it, I was in my room on my PC, and he stormed in with a grin on his face and looked at me and said, "I got an Xbox now." I knew what was about to happen, so I calmly said, "I know," without even looking at him. Because I ignored him, I could tell that he was mad. He put his hands on my desk and said, "It's so much stronger than your computer," which it is definitely not. He had only bought an Xbox because he was jealous of my computer. Therefore, he doesn't even know how to use it. With this information, I said, "You can't even watch YouTube on it," and left a small little chuckle at the end for good measure. Of course you can watch YouTube, but he obviously doesn't know that. He then stormed out of my room and looked like he was about to cry. Then, this part is what really made my blood boil. I live in a small city, and a few of my friends live on the opposite side of the city, so it's about a 3-hour drive from where I live. So after a long week of school, I decided to visit my friends. When I arrived, I was really tired and ended up staying late and accidentally falling asleep. Eventually, I had woken up early and realized what had happened, so I gathered my things and I left. After a long journey, I had come home and jumped into my bed. After another short power nap, I had woken up and realized that my computer was missing. At first, I had thought someone had stolen it, because in my bedroom, I have a long sliding door, which is always open in the day and locked right before I go to bed. Before I panicked any further, I calmed myself down, and I went through the steps mentally of figuring out what I should do next. The first thing that came to my mind was to phone my mom and ask her if anything had happened. When I told her my situation, she was livid. She was as anxious as I was, and after she calmed down, she phoned most of our family members who lived in the area, one of them being my entitled aunt. After a few days of looking, I was hopeless. I went to the police station and I filed a report. Fast forward to a few months later, and I was at my cousin's birthday party, and he had his party at his house, and my aunt had asked my mom to come early to help set up some decorations. Once we arrived, my aunt offered us a drink and took us to the kitchen, which is right next to her TV room. When I turned around the corner, I was livid. There, sitting right in front of me, was my computer, sitting on a foot-long table sideways, and the same cousin from earlier was using it. I started screaming at the top of my voice, "What are you doing?" I rushed over to my cousin, unplugged my computer, and looked at my aunt and said, "Why do you have my computer?" She then says to me, "Oh, we're just borrowing it." And after asking for clarification on what she meant by that, I turned to my cousin and said, "If your Xbox is better, why did you steal my computer?" And I said this in a loud, angry voice. At this point, he ran out of the room while he cried his eyes out. I picked up my computer and stormed to my mom's car. I put it in the trunk and picked up my phone and immediately called the police. I explained my situation and how my computer had been missing for months and that I found it at my aunt and cousin's house. All the while, my aunt and my mom come running out screaming at me. "What do you think you're doing?" is all they could really ask me. I responded with, "What do you think I'm doing?" And at this point, she went silent. A few minutes later, the cops arrived and I explained my situation. And thankfully, the cop was understanding. And after asking if I wanted to press charges, I said that I did. My entitled aunt ended up with a week in jail and a $250 fine, as well as 200 hours of community service. Many of my family members, including my mom, have been messaging me saying that I'm in the wrong. So what do you think? Am I the jerk for this situation? You are not the jerk in that situation, and I can only imagine how how frustrating that must have been. These people stole your property. I would be super upset if someone did that to me. There would be no excusing that, especially my computer. Computers can be expensive, and they're not easy to replace. I've always been of the opinion that if you want to play stupid games, you're gonna win stupid prizes, and the aunt got exactly what she deserved. So maybe next time she'll think before she tries to steal. This story came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. If you'd like to submit your own stories, check the links in the description. We would love to hear about your experiences. My boyfriend has been living with me rent-free and makes about 10 times the amount that I do, and I don't know how to bring this up or how to approach this topic of him paying rent at all. My boyfriend and I have been together for about a year. We're both just entering our 30s, and he just started residency, making about 2 times as much money as I do, with the promise of making much more in the future. When we started living together, it sort of just happened when his living situation fell through. I offered to be the one to pay rent since we were planning for the future and talking about getting married, and I told him I know he's going to have to pull the wagon financially a lot then because he would be making about 10 times the amount that I would, so I'd be happy to do it for now. It was a brief conversation, but he agreed. We do split all other bills, including groceries, and he offers to pay when we go out for meals, but I'm basically living paycheck to paycheck. We talk very openly about our financial situations, so he does know about this aspect of my life. However, I'm now starting to feel a growing resentment that he hasn't offered to split the rent, which would be about $500 each. I know I sort of did this to myself with my offer to have him stay here without rent, but I want to be open and ask him about this once again. I just don't want him to feel trapped to do it or misled somehow. The $500 also may actually allow me to save for once and not have to be extremely stringent, and this money would not put a dent on his pocket in the slightest. I guess I'm just worried about how this would be perceived if I did start asking him to suddenly start paying rent. Does anyone have any ideas on how I should handle this situation? Should I give it a year to honor my offer and then start asking to split it? What should I do? I don't think there's anything wrong with approaching this topic with someone who you're obviously open about with this kind of stuff anyways. Like, you can just blatantly tell them, hey, my situation changed and you need to reconsider your financial arrangements. I genuinely don't think there's anything wrong with asking. It sounds like this guy is absolutely on your side and he's very open and available, and it sounds like he's going to help if he can. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of conflict in you approaching this topic again. And yeah, you're right. It definitely seems like you're going back on your word. But I think if you consider your financial situation, it will be easy to see that, yeah, you need help with rent. So I think if you're just honest with him and you lay it all out there and tell him the nitty-gritty details about your paycheck at the moment, I'm sure he would be more than willing to help out with rent and step up and actually help you pay for rent. My ex-girlfriend is acting very weird, especially after we've tried to make things work multiple times, and I just don't know if she's using me or not. So I started dating this girl like 5 months ago. We started talking, but she didn't seem to be that interested in me. For example, whenever I wrote her, she always replied to me like 2 to 3 hours later. I started talking to her friends to make sure that she was still interested in me, and they all gave me a yes, she is 100% still interested. Anyway, times go by, and after a month of seeing each other, we kissed. And we just kissed. We didn't stop dating. We still were together at least 2 to 3 times a week, and when we were together in real life, she always looked happy and wanted to stay with me. Then, when we were texting, she looked just so uninterested. One day, she told me that she wanted me to meet her dad, and that was weird, but that made me think that she was looking for a serious relationship. After 3 weeks since that kiss, she left me. She didn't even tell me why. No reason, just straight up left. Of course, I wasn't going to go and beg her to stay with me, so I started to go out with friends and getting to know other people. And while I didn't meet other girls, I did just chill around with my buddies. I eventually met her friends, and they told me she feels guilty for leaving me like that, and that she wants to start a relationship with me again. A week ago, we met up again. She comes to me and says that she's sorry for what she's done to me. She knows that she broke my heart. And that same night, we kissed again, and we were together the whole night, talking and acting like we were a couple again. She wrote me that same night and said that she was too tired to talk, and she was going to write me the next day. That was a week ago. She did not write me back, and there's no way I'm going to write her. I don't want to act like I'm a love addict, but I am still in love with her just a little bit. But after this behavior, I started to think that she might just be using me. But why would she do that? I'm not rich and I'm not that handsome. She doesn't look or act like the kind of girl that uses men, and I'm her first boyfriend too. This is all so very confusing, and I just don't know what to do. I can definitely understand where the original poster is coming from, where they feel like this girl is just using him. I mean, to go from kissing and making up and trying to be like, oh, I'm so sorry for acting like this, only to then disappear and start ghosting him again, is really toxic in my opinion. And this kind of behavior simply will not make for a good relationship. There is a possibility that she's playing some form of hard to get, and that she wants you to chase after her and beg for her attention, but that's really weird in my opinion, and I personally see that as coming off as really needy. So if that is the case and she's just trying to play games, then I think in my honest opinion, I would take her not responding to your text message, as well as not following through on messaging you back, as a sign that you should just move on and find somebody else. This type of insecurity and this lack of commitment is not going to be healthy, and you will literally just be chasing after a ghost. And I think you can do so much better than that. My fiance is never happy with work, despite going through multiple career changes. And at this point, I don't know what to do. My fiance and I have been together for about 5 years now, and we've been living together for 4, and we've been engaged for about 1 year altogether. When we first met, he had just completed a Peace Corps type of job that kept him in our state, but working out in nature, in places like state parks and trails, stuff along those lines. He was incredibly charming, charismatic, and confident. He was someone who was always in a good mood. He was friendly and ready for anything. Throughout the course of our relationship, he has had a few career changes. His first job had a terrible schedule, from 4 a.m. to 2 p.m., and he was tired and miserable, so I supported him in his job search. He eventually found a job that he stuck with for about 3 years. He was progressing well and making good money. Despite this, he would come home and vent to me about how much he hated it for the hours at the time. No exaggeration, he would come home at 6 o'clock at night and ruminate until he went to bed at 10 o'clock. I tried to be supportive, as well as suggesting that maybe he could see a therapist, as well as maybe switching jobs. He took my advice about switching careers, and so he got a job in trades, with great benefits, great pay, and good hours. It's been about a year since he switched over to this trade job, and he is starting his old pattern again, coming home, venting to me, letting his hatred for the job dominate his thoughts and feelings. At this point, I realize it's probably not the job that he hates, but just the cyclical pattern of negative behavior. And now, I literally do not know what else I can do for him. I try to listen, but I can't listen to his talk about how much he hates his job for 4 to 5 hours a day. We don't do anything else. He declines ideas for date nights, getting out of the house, and just wants to sit around and be miserable. It's impacting my mental health at this point, and I have tried to put boundaries in place for it to stop, but he won't do it. He refuses to see a therapist or talk to a doctor about it, and I am really just at a loss of what to do for him. Some additional points. For starters, we are both financially independent, so it's not a money thing. Also, he is still the same happy-go-lucky person with his friends. I feel cheated out of the person I thought he was when we first got together. They see the best of him, and I get this miserable lump on the couch who is constantly complaining. To make things even more complicated, we're in the middle of closing on a house, and he has to stick to this job until we close, but he's saying he doesn't know if he can make it through the next month. What should I do? It sounds like he definitely needs to get his life straightened out, and until that gets figured out to some degree, I would not look to buy that house yet. I can completely understand where you don't feel like you have any place in the world and your job doesn't satisfy you 100%. I don't know of any job that will do that though, so he's got to find better ways to cope with his negative feelings and thoughts instead of just venting to you and making your life miserable. Unfortunately, it sounds like the original poster has become his default emotional dumping ground. He vents all of his toxic garbage onto this person and then enjoys himself talking to his friends, and this is just really unhealthy for you. So he really needs to find healthy coping mechanisms, and that does not mean that it's gotta be you. So finding a therapist or something along those lines really would do him some good. I think also setting some clear boundaries and making those boundaries known would really do him some good. All you can do is try, because otherwise this is just gonna be miserable for both of you, and you most definitely do not deserve to be treated that way. My roommate embarrassed me about my sensitive health issues, and I'm not sure how to react or what to do. Here's some background. About 2 years ago, I started to develop a neurological problem with my bladder. Nothing serious, but very embarrassing to deal with, especially on a daily basis. And it took me a long time to regain my confidence in public. Basically, my brain sends wrong signals to my bladder, and I often don't have enough time to rush to the bathroom once I feel the urge to go to the bathroom, if that makes sense. I am followed by several specialists, and I take treatments for this, but currently I cannot leave my home without risking a loss of control. My only solution for the moment, even though I hate it, is to wear diapers. I don't talk to anyone about it. It makes me extremely paranoid in public, and I can't dress the way I want to. In short, it's just awful to deal with. I finally regained some confidence, and for a few months now, I have been able to have a social life once again, especially through my friend Sarah. This is not her real name. We met during my studies. We got along last year, and we finally decided to take an apartment together for our last year at the university. We've been living together for 6 months now, and she's the only person, apart from my parents, I've ended up telling about my problem out of convenience, so that I don't spend my life stressing about her noticing something. About 2 months ago, our relationship cooled down, which all stemmed back to the fact that I couldn't go to a party last second that she wanted me to go to. She blamed me, and since then, I have the impression that she tends to torment me in a rather sadistic way in connection with what I confided to her. Here are some examples of what she'll do. Sometimes when we're in a break during our class, she tells me, while in a conversation with 2 other students, that she is going to the bathroom. Then she asks me if I'm coming too, before taking a falsely embarrassed look and then saying that she's sorry and that she forgot, in a very non-discreet way. It made me very uncomfortable in front of 2 other people that don't know what she's trying to do. Overall though, I think I've learned to mask my panic when my symptoms come up, but sometimes it's not possible. One day I'm taking the bus home with her and her sister, and I suddenly have an emergency in the middle of traffic. Even though I'm technically protected, realizing that I'm going to lose control is always humiliating for me. So she must have seen my face in that moment and saw that I was stressed or uncomfortable and understood what was happening. And she said to me in a falsely sympathetic tone if I was feeling okay because I looked nervous. She then said in a snide tone, "If it's what I think it is, don't worry. No one will be able to see it because, well, you know." Again, the words are compassionate, but in her attitude, I felt like she was about to say it in front of her sister that she knows I have to wear diapers. At that moment, I was on the verge of tears. Another time involved when we were shopping. It was just the 2 of us this time, and again, the same scenario starts happening, where she says something before looking like she regrets it right after. While we're shopping, we pass in front of a store that sells t-shirts that are kind of short, so that they show the bottom of your belly, and she looks at them and says, "Oh, this one would suit you better," before taking back that and saying sorry, while also saying, "Oh wait, you couldn't wear that because you're trying to hide, you know." And these are just a few examples that really hurt me. To sum this up, I really have the impression that she is using this illness against me, all because I couldn't go to a party last second, and that she tries to find every opportunity she can to confront me with my handicap, especially while we're in public. I don't know if I'm paranoid, and I don't know how to talk to her about it either. What should I do? This is honestly actually disturbing to me, that someone would use this kind of information against somebody, all for the sake of trying to humiliate them. This is unbelievably toxic. It's hard to know exactly why someone would do something like this, but I think the punchline here is that you need to find a new roommate and somewhere else to live. This is someone who absolutely cannot be trusted with anything. What a terrible thing to hang over somebody's head. This situation and the problems you have are already embarrassing enough, let alone to have somebody hang it over your head and threaten to expose you over this at every chance they can get. It's disturbing, it's disgusting, and I honestly can't believe someone would seriously act like this. So in my opinion, I would start looking for a new place to live, because this abusive behavior for me proves that she is not a good friend. In fact, with everything you've described, she is not a friend at all. She is a straight up bully, and you absolutely should not have to ever put up with this. My wife almost cheated on me, and I just found out, and now I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Before my wife was even my girlfriend, she was involved with a married man. They didn't go all the way, at least that's what she claims, but came pretty close. Fast forward a year since the above happened, and we're in a relationship. She felt guilty for what she had done, and she told me, which is all good. It wasn't during my time, and it was none of my business. So I frankly forgave her. But the thing is that they had to keep traveling together, not alone, but in a group. In the last trip, when it was almost time to come back, there was a party, and she danced with the guy. I know many people may think a dance is not that much, but in this case, it was. At the time, we were boyfriend and girlfriend, but not engaged yet. She eventually told me about this. She did because she realized that if she didn't, other people in the same traveling group would have told me. We talked about it a few times. Over the years, she gave me a few explanations of why she did, which changed over time. She didn't know anybody at the party, and she wanted to enjoy it. She was just dancing and didn't mean anything about it. She wanted to make sure she didn't have feelings for the guy anymore. All these explanations, all differing from the other. But the last explanation was particularly troublesome for me. I confronted her, asking what would happen if she still had feelings for him. Would she have cheated on me to go with him? She answered that we were only a few months into our relationship and that I wasn't that important. And that absolutely floored me. Anyway, she stopped traveling with that group, lost contact with the guy, and we moved on. Eventually, we got engaged engaged and married. We were good together with ups and downs, but generally overall pretty good. Last week, while browsing my Facebook feed, I found an alert that they had become friends online. As soon as they did, he shared a few pictures of the travel when they got intimate together. It crushed me to see the guy hugging her. We talked and I told her I wasn't comfortable with her being in contact with him, and so thankfully she unfriended him. All the story so far is just context. Here's where the juicy part comes in. As soon as we got married, it seemed like a switch flipped on her immediately, and spending quality time together became a less frequent thing, if you know what I mean. We were married and we loved each other, but she always had pretexts as to why we could not spend time together. I got frustrated as to why, given that she clearly didn't have any trouble making out with this guy in front of other people that she knew, yet with her lawfully married husband, she wouldn't spend any time with. After 3 years, I finally linked both things. It's possibly wrong, but I did. She felt about that guy so strongly that she didn't care if other people saw them making out, but she feels so little about me that she doesn't want to be with me more than once a week. I know I shouldn't, but I'm comparing myself to this guy now. I feel so insecure about her feelings towards me that I constantly question why we're even together. I'm about to tell her to leave the house, which by the way is mine. I had it before we got married. If you can think of any reason not to, please, I need to hear it, because I honestly don't know what to do. This is definitely a really tricky situation. Obviously, your wife opened up to you and told you about a moment where she did something that she definitely regrets. And from the looks of it, she seems to be doing everything that you're asking in terms of distancing herself from this guy and trying to stay away. And it seems like after 3 years, you're kind of getting it together and connecting the dots that maybe she didn't care about you the way that you thought she did, which is really unfortunate. This entire marriage and situation definitely sounds like a mess, and I think the two of you really could benefit from having therapy together, some kind of couples counseling or something to work this out, because otherwise this really could cause problems in your relationship, and I just think it would be unwise to make any kind of rash decision without some kind of professional help first to try and mediate. My crazy boss is obsessed with what I do after work and has made it a point to monitor my every move. Things are so bad that he is personally reaching out to my dad, trying to convince him that I am just a disappointment, and I honestly don't know what to do. I am a 24-year-old female and my boss is in his 50s. We work in construction and there are others that act similar to my boss, and it's really got me worried. My boss makes comments about my life outside of work. Mind you, it does not interfere with my work. He has said as much, and it is nothing I'm remotely ashamed of. I've worked in construction for years, and I'm used to the jabs and the insults at this point. The issue with my boss is that he knows my dad and had a long conversation with him divulging all of this information about me. I'm an adult and entirely financially independent, and I live on my own. I told my dad about some of this stuff, but my dad doesn't care. My boss had a lot of outside of work complaints about me. For starters, he doesn't like the way I park my car. He expects me to back in and takes pictures and lectures me the next day about it. He doesn't like that I drink and play cards with coworkers some nights on Saturdays. I drink wine, but I don't get drunk, and I didn't go home with anybody else. I also am not late to work, and I don't drive when I'm under the influence. He also didn't like that I started dating a guy for 2 months, and for one of those months, the guy I was dating started spending the night. I was told by my boss that I needed to raise my standards for who I date. There are many other situations kind of like this that include my eating habits as well as my gym habits. I am really upset because I'm practically my boss's assistant. We work very closely together on a daily basis. I consider him a friend, but he told my dad all of these private things that have nothing to do with my work, just to try and make him disappointed in me. After everything was said and done, and we were alone in the office, he told me that he's told my dad all of this stuff 3 times in a row, all just to try and get a reaction out of me. He just kept saying, "Your dad was so disappointed in you." I made sure he didn't see it, but I went to my car and I cried later. I want to confront him today. I'm going to be calm and professional. I'm just going to state that I'm an independent adult. My work performance is the only thing that should be of concern to him, and that he is acting extremely inappropriately by monitoring what I do outside of work. And as a side note, I won't be attempting to talk to HR about this, as I don't think they will be very helpful in resolving this. But hopefully this will just take care of this issue and I can just settle this once and for all. This is completely inappropriate behavior from your boss. He is literally walking all over you and he knows no boundaries. It's just really disgusting that he's monitoring you and he's trying to report back to your dad, all to try and make him seem like you're some bad kid, when in reality, you're an adult, you pay your way, and you're just working. What you do outside of work literally has nothing to do with him. I would really be suspicious of this behavior, and I 100% 100% would go to HR tomorrow. You can talk to him about this, but I would much rather get something in writing with HR stating that you filed a complaint before he could try and get you fired, which is unfortunately something you need to be careful about. And it's really disappointing that your dad is not being more proactive in telling this guy to buzz off and leave his daughter alone. Like, why hasn't your dad put him in his place? If someone came up to me talking about my daughter and saying all these terrible things, not only would I not want anything to do with him, but I'd also tell him off. This is just weird. To be completely honest, your boss sounds like he's trying to stalk you. And while yes, there are some boundaries that definitely need to be set in what is and isn't appropriate in a work environment, I think you really need to go to HR and file a complaint. And if anything, start looking for another job, because what you're describing is super creepy. And I think you would be much better off and safer working somewhere else, because this guy's a creep and you do not need this in your life. An entitled customer called the manager over something another girl and I did, and neither of us did anything wrong. So I work at a restaurant, but a lot of people order the pastries ahead of time that we serve so they can take the pastries home. I work in the pre-order department, and for one of the orders, I was packing a small fruit tart. I guess as I was walking back to the delivery station, this lady saw me fumbling with the fruit tart. The fruit tart was intact, it wasn't falling apart, but I guess she didn't like that. She asked me for another bag, so I gave it to her, but I didn't pack it because at the moment, a coworker asked me for help. It was a really busy day, so I had to help her. The lady then actually requested for a manager. I was somewhere else, but I could hear a little bit of the conversation. She was ranting to the manager that I was fumbling the bag, and she was mad that I gave her the bag and left to help my coworker. As a side note, we're not required to put stuff in the bag if the bag is an extra one that they requested. The manager talked to me afterwards and told me that that lady is just an idiot and that I should just ignore her. A couple of weeks later, the same lady came back. Another girl in my department was helping her, and the lady was telling my coworker to smile, but it wasn't in a friendly way like, honey, smile. No, she was being very pushy and aggressive. I was only a few feet away, and my coworker wasn't being rude or anything. She just wasn't smiling. Also, we were wearing masks, so it's not like she could have seen it anyways. The lady told my coworker to have a good day, and my coworker said, thank you, you too. That's when this lady said, I was being sarcastic. I really hope your day is terrible. And this lady actually was dead serious when she said this too. On the way out, she saw two of the managers and started talking to them. She was ranting about the situation for a good 5 minutes. It got to the point where one of the managers started crying. The other manager got the entire department standing in a circle and told us that we need to smile more. I get where they're coming from, but it's completely annoying because it's like the manager just took the customer's side and didn't think about us in the slightest. This lady is likely going to come back, and to be honest, I'm dreading it. I can't stand customers like that who not only ask you to smile when you're trying to do your job, but also try and make a fuss over everything. Worst of all, I hate managers who act like this. They're the type of people who not only do not deal with these types of conflicts, but they have no backbone in the face of any type of criticism. They literally bend to any customer who comes in and complains. And that is such a toxic work environment because it throws you, the lonely employee, under the bus, even if you haven't done anything wrong. And not all of these managers are bad. The first manager got it. She could see that this woman was a problem, but the two other managers really need to get their act together and stand up for their employees who didn't do anything wrong. That for me is the most enraging part of this story. So hopefully in the long run, you don't plan on working there for the rest of your life because the managers do not care about the situations you have to deal with, and these entitled Karens are just going to keep coming in and complaining about weird things. And I'm sure you can find a better job where you don't have to deal with this on a daily basis. I damaged my mom's new car, and I'm not sure how to tell my dad who has anger issues. So I'm really at a loss on how to move forward. Some important info to know off the bat. Recently, my family and I moved to a new place. We needed to get a car, and after a while found a great secondhand one for a good price with some decent miles on it. My dad works abroad and can only come home every few months. My mom also works. So we had to take it back to the garage after a couple of days because of an issue with the gas, and only got it back today. I have been working to get my license as I currently only have a permit, and myself and my mom were driving back from the garage with our new car. My mom allowed me to drive and we drove around for a bit so I could practice. Everything was going really well, and we finally arrived home. We live in an apartment complex, and all the cars have their own small select space. Ours is right next to a large barrier holding up the roof of the car complex. The barrier has a lot of marks on it and a couple of dents, showing that it has been hit before, and these barriers have been a nuisance to all of our neighbors, with them next to their spaces. I have even heard them complain and seen them struggle with parking. When I first drove into the space, the car was a little too close to the car next to us, us, so I reversed and drove in again. Unfortunately, this time I was paying too much attention as to not hit the car next to us, resulting in myself instead hitting the barrier. There aren't any dents or serious damage done to the car, but there are some scratches and some paint scrapes. Quite a lot actually, down alongside where the front lights are. I don't need any advice for what to do next. My mom has tried calming me down and telling me that she will get it looked at by different places and see what the price will be to fix it, and that it's not that bad. But I know she's just trying to make me feel better. She says we can afford to fix it and it won't be that much. But I'm currently in a state of shock. I've cried and I feel so guilty. I know I need to tell my dad. This is big and my first car accident, but I don't know how to tell him. My dad has anger issues. Not bad or abusive, but still anger issues all the same. He contributed a good fraction to my mom to help pay for it. My younger brother accidentally damaged a neighbor's car, which only had some minor damage done when he was a child, and my dad was furious. He doesn't finish his job and won't be back for another couple of months, maybe in November. And even though this is technically my mom's car, it's still something I'm going to need to tell him about. It's also my birthday this week, and I really don't want to have to tell him then. He's in another continent where time zones are almost opposite to us, so there are a few times in the day that we can call. He's asked to see what the car looks like on video, just to check it out as it is a big purchase. It's not something I can lie about. I'm religious and I know the importance of honesty. Even if I didn't tell him, as we'll have the car fixed by the time he gets home, I know I will have this on my conscience and will feel guilty about this for a long time. How do I go about handling this? What should I do? First and foremost, you need to take a breath and realize you're being way too hard on yourself. All you did was scratch the paint on this car. You didn't pop a tire, you didn't break anything. It's not like this thing is not functional. You only scratched it a little bit. And sure, it might be along the side, but guess what? That can be fixed. And it can honestly most likely be fixed without him even knowing about it. That's not you being dishonest. That's you just fixing it before he needs to know. So I really would not worry about this. I honestly don't think it would be hiding anything. It's fantastic to be honest, but I think there's a difference between being honest and putting your foot in your mouth. Like, does he really need to know that you scratched the side of the car? You and your mom have already worked out how you're gonna get it fixed, and this is literally just a paint job. And then all of your problems go away. If you really are that worried and feel the need to confess to your dad, then by all means have your mom tell him. It sounds like your dad's anger issues really affect you in a negative way, so I don't think you should have to subject yourself to that in any way, shape, or form. For context, the original poster is 18 years old, so I'm sure they're freaking out that this is probably going to be the end of the world, but in all actuality, it's a very easy fix. So don't freak out, talk to your mom, and I really don't think you should just go forward and straight up tell your dad, hey, I scratched the car without you knowing. Just relax and see if you can get it fixed before he gets back, because there's no reason to freak out over something that can easily be fixed. My boyfriend didn't get me anything for my birthday, and I'm still very upset over it. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds very selfish and materialistic. I already know that, trust me. But I need to vent and I want some advice. My boyfriend and I have been together for over a year. In that year, he has not gotten me one gift besides a $75 photo shoot for our 1-year anniversary, which I had to pay in advance and he paid me back. Anyways, I'm trying to not sound materialistic, but I am so tired of this. I got nothing for my birthday last year, nothing for Christmas, nothing for Valentine's Day, nothing for any of our month anniversaries before our 1-year anniversary, which he even tried to ignore. And now again, nothing for my birthday this year. I have gotten him something for each. In fact, this last birthday he had, I spent over $90 on him when I really didn't have the money, but then again, I love him, so I did it anyways. Yesterday was my birthday. I got up when I did, he wished me a happy birthday, and left for work. I got up, showered, got my tire on my car replaced, then drove around and got all of my birthday freebies and saw some family. He got home at about 5 o'clock at night, and I suggested that we should go to dinner because I had coupons, so we could both eat for free. I had a birthday coupon and rewards I was willing to use on him. I was expecting some kind of gift for my birthday because I have gotten him one for every occasion. That one was expected. Well, I asked him about it, and he said he just got paid today, so we could go after dinner to Walmart or something, and I could pick something out. I'm not too keen on picking out my own birthday gift because I'm very indecisive, but I was okay with it, I guess. We finished dinner, and he ended up using the rewards for takeout, then he got something else for $20. My meal was free, so he was still just paying for himself. We went to Walmart after dinner, and I was walking around pointing stuff out. The most expensive thing I pointed out was $30, and he just kept saying, oh, there goes all my money, and it was so annoying, so I just stopped pointing stuff out. He would then ask me, are you gonna choose anything? I was getting getting frustrated because I didn't understand why I was picking out my own birthday gift. I asked if he had a limit on how much he wanted to spend, and he said about $15. I held my tongue, but he spent more than that on himself at dinner, and he wastes his money on video games, his scooter, pretty much everything but me. All the while, I've spoiled him with 10 times that amount. We walked through the card aisle, the flower aisle, the candy aisle, and he didn't even bat an eye or even offer. Eventually, we agreed on a movie night instead of picking out a gift. I was annoyed, but I was trying to stay positive. I asked what movie he wanted to watch, and he kept saying, "I don't know," as well as "I don't care." And the only relative answer I got was nothing girly or any love movies. I was so frustrated at that point, I said never mind, and I just went home. We've been having issues recently, and he even told me that he would put more effort into our relationship. I'm not mad he didn't get me a birthday present, or that he didn't pay for my dinner. I would have even been happy with a handwritten note on a piece of paper of notebook paper. I'm really just mad because he really didn't put any thought into a gift. We've been together for over a year, and he just said that he doesn't know what to get me. It hurts that I always put so much thought into his gifts, even when I'm not sure what he wants, yet he can't even get me a card. My sister ended up taking me out at 10 o'clock at night, and she bought me flowers, candy, and a candle, and held me while I cried. I just wanted him to put thought into a gift, but I didn't get that, and now I don't know what to do. This is really sketchy behavior for a few reasons. You would think your boyfriend would do the basic thing of at least getting like a birthday card or something from the store. Like that does not take a lot of effort. And he's not gotten you anything for Christmas, Valentine's Day, anniversaries. He's even tried to forget about the anniversary altogether. I mean, does this guy care about you at all? I can understand people not like giving gifts, but this guy very clearly likes receiving gifts. So why is he not reciprocating? That's really strange to me. You would think that you would want to give back when someone's given so much to you. I would be super insulted as well if he drove me to Walmart and said, "Okay, pick something out, but not too expensive." Like, how ridiculous is that? So in my opinion, you absolutely have every reason to be upset. And it's not you being selfish or materialistic. You clearly find value in gift giving, and you wanted to receive a gift of some kind on your birthday, especially from your significant other. So I think if anything, it's time to talk to him about that. You need to explain that, hey, these types of gifts and situations mean a lot to me. There might be a chance that he just doesn't understand that, but even that, he should just know to do that, right? I don't know, maybe that's just me. But I think if you talk to him about it and hopefully communicate that to him, maybe he can change his ways and be more attentive when it comes to those special holidays, because they obviously mean a lot to you, and you want those to be special by receiving a gift. And I really don't think you're asking too much by doing that. My boyfriend ruined my weekend, and now I want to avenge my day while he's out of town, but I'm not sure if that's the right plan. Here's what happened. For a bit of context, my boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years. We dated for 1.5 years long distance and just moved in together 6 months ago. He is more introverted and I am more extroverted. I love music and dancing and having an occasional drink and love to be outdoors. My boyfriend likes to go camping, kayaking, and spending time in nature. He's actually said he feels like the music and dancing scene is empty and pointless. We have gone out once to a bar, and I could tell he didn't like the techno and was uncomfortable. We have gone on 4 kayaking and hiking trips, and I have loved them and had a lot of fun. I finally got an opportunity to go to a free festival that our city has that he invited me to. I was looking forward to it all work week. I thought of my outfit, how excited I was to dance to live techno and see some art. I was looking forward to exploring the 5 different stages and potentially meeting new people, as I have yet to make a single friend in our town. When the day finally rolls around and I'm on my way to the event, my boyfriend says in all seriousness that my outfit looked terrible and that I was going to make him uncomfortable around families the way I was dressed. My skirt might have been a little bit short, but I had boy shorts underneath and didn't show any more skin than my legs. I was deeply hurt by his words and just wanted to go home and change. We went anyway, but I legit could not stop crying because I felt so cute, and now I just wanted to go home and change. I did find pants, and when I changed, he got upset that I threw my skirt away and changed anyway. I told him that I just wanted him to not be embarrassed by me, but then I think he just started to feel guilty about the way he made me feel, so he was even more upset. I spent the entire night crying at the event. I made no new friends. I didn't even dance. I didn't even look at art because all I was focused on was clothes. I did see one person that I made Facebook friends with that is an admin to the local music page that I follow, but I didn't even want to talk to him because my face was swollen and red from crying so much. We did talk about it and explain that his words hurt me deeply and that he could have just asked me to change or even said it in a nicer way. And afterwards he agreed and he apologized. But there won't be any more events like this this one in the near future. And I'm not even upset about what he said anymore, as I am that I didn't get to seize the moment and enjoy myself at the event like I had been waiting to do for months. This weekend, there's another kayaking event that we were supposed to go to. I was supposed to go and even made plans to go out of state with friends to meet up there. But a part of me wants to avenge last weekend. I want to go buy new clothes, sell some of my old clothes, and then go out and find some music and just enjoy myself. He promised me that he would never tell me what to wear and what not to wear ever again, but I also don't want to make him feel uncomfortable. I'm getting older, and I know that I can't dress like that forever, so I'm okay with getting rid of my fishnets and flashy clothes, but part of me feels sad because I like those clothes. He said I can do whatever I want as far as going on the trip or not, but I can tell he's disappointed that I won't be going. We bond a lot during these trips, but we've gone on so many of these trips, and the one time we go out to do what I want to do, and I end up crying the entire night. We are going to Philadelphia next week, and maybe I can avenge the bad day there, but I want it sooner. And part of me knows I'll be more carefree at a club while he's gone, just because he is so shy sometimes when we go out, and it makes me feel bad that I want to go out without him. So my question is, should I stay or should I go on this camping trip that we planned? What should I do? I would really not sell your clothes just because of one bad weekend. Those clothes are harmless, and honestly, they're not that big of a deal. For context, the original poster is only 24 years old. Like, you're not that old where you can't wear those clothes and have a good time. So getting rid of them just to try and grow up or something like that, in my opinion, is just a terrible move. And it sounds like you're only doing that because your boyfriend made a terrible comment about what you're wearing, which in my opinion was super inappropriate. I also find it really disturbing that your boyfriend describes the music and dancing scene that you enjoy as empty and pointless. That to me is just really unfair and is honestly a little bit toxic. It sounds like these music events and these dancing parties are innocent opportunities to meet people and have a good time, and in no way are they some kind of nefarious activity meant to go behind your boyfriend's back or something like that. There's clearly nothing shady going on here. You just enjoy music and you want to dance. But I can completely understand that you want to try and get that weekend back. So in my opinion, if you don't want to go on this camping trip, then don't go. Your boyfriend already said that he understands that he's not going to make you do something, and it sounds like you're on good terms because he apologized and he said he'll never do that again. So I don't think there's going to be any harm in going out and having a good time. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.